Okay, got my headphones. Bear with me. Bear with me, people. I'm drying my clothes, so bear with me. We're gonna watch some Cody Leaches.
You know what? This is actually quite a page turner.
Why are you? Come down here so I can suck your cock, pretty boy!
He wants his cock sucked. Damn internet. My apologies, my internet's not the best. My internet's not the best.
What is up, guys? Welcome to my review of Evil Dead Burn. This is one of my more anticipated movies of the year and officially the 6th film in the Evil Dead franchise. For the longest time, if you asked me, Cody, what are the most consistent quality horror franchises out there?
We don't care. We just want a review of Evil Dead Burn. We don't want the rest of the bullshit. The man looked like he got titties.
Tell you Child's Play, I would tell you Evil Dead, and I would tell you Scream. Well, over time, that one kind of went away, and with the existence of Scream 7, I guess I could pretty much only say Evil Dead now. But all joking aside, this is a franchise that's been going strong for 45 years. I don't think they have missed yet up to this point. I mean, there are movies that I prefer more than others, of course. We all have our preferences, but there is not a bad entry in the Evil Dead franchise. And what I think is really exciting about this kind of modern take on these Evil Dead movies with these different filmmakers doing their own takes, with Sam Raimi being kind of like an overseer or a producer, is that you get a lot of people's interpretation of Evil Dead. You get their own style with the filmmaking, you get their own little themes that they want to go for. And so starting with the Fede Alvarez film, which is my personal favorite, you got a very wildly different and much more brutal take on Evil Dead. And then Evil Dead Rise last year finally kind of getting this franchise out of the cabin in the woods and putting it into this high-rise apartment. So with Evil Dead Burn, my biggest expectations were, what are we going to do something different? I don't really have a whole lot of worries about it being entertaining. I don't have a whole lot of worries about it being quality. But what is going to stand out about this movie that's not going to make it feel like all the other Evil Dead films? That's really all that I wanted. And after having seen it last night, I can tell you confidently that this franchise still has not missed. I did enjoy Evil Dead Burn. I think it's a very good entry into the franchise that most fans of Evil Dead will really enjoy. With that being said, there are some concerns that I had, so this is definitely not my favorite Evil Dead by any means, but one that I really dug. And starting off with the positives, yet again, what I like about this movie, which has been a running streak with this franchise thus far, is that it very much has its own identity. This is a film that looks different than most of the other Evil Dead films. I think the style of the director really comes through to kind of put his own stamp on it. We're yet again kind of diving into a little bit of a different commentary that I'll talk about that does make it narratively stand out from the rest of them. But most of all, this is a movie that I think is pushing the Evil Dead franchise about as far as you can go into the mean territory. Now, that might be taken as a challenge, and the guy that's doing Wrath might look at that and say, hold my beer, buddy, you haven't seen nothing yet. But this is a franchise that has always kind of moved between being really dark, depraved, and fucked up horror and having like this very self-aware, silly, and campy tone. That was much more present in the original 3, obviously, but has still found its way into the most recent films, while everything after Fede Alvarez definitely pushing more into the horror territory. Evil Dead Burn goes about as far as you can go. This is a very violent and mean Evil Dead film. Like, this is one that is not pulling any punches. It's not really trying to even have a whole lot of fun along the way. It's just like, let's get the Deadites in here, let them fuck people up and fuck themselves up. So if you're somebody that likes a little bit more of the darker and the depraved and the violent side of the Evil Dead series, I think this is the one that is going the furthest with that direction. Now, I say that with a little bit of an asterisk because I have seen a lot of early reactions, predominantly on the influencer side, if I can be honest, that are hyping this up as like the most depraved and sick and gory thing you're ever going to see. Terrifier, better watch out. No, it's not quite that level. But as far as Evil Dead standards of what we've seen so far, I think there's a solid argument that this one might be the most violent, but there's some pretty gnarly shit that happened in the last couple too. So you like violence, you like depravity, if you like gore and just nasty ass Deadites, Evil Dead Burns got him. The biggest thing to me that's going to make this entry stand out that I really enjoyed is the set pieces as well as the camera work specifically. Now, the initial little teaser trailer that we got, it's unfortunate that that specific sequence was kind of spoiled in the teaser, but it made for a phenomenal advertisement for the movie. That was all that I watched, and I was just absolutely in, as if I wasn't already in already. But that type of like using a one-shot take to do just a big set piece of all the different Deadites kind of attacking different family members, having certain sequences where somebody flips a boat and the camera flips and goes into the water with them, having somebody being dragged up the walls into the ceiling and the camera follows them, almost like a fly on the wall. All of that is something that is really unique that we haven't quite seen that style done in Evil Dead yet. And all of those moments in the film is when I personally got the most pumped. That was like the film fan in me eating good for Evil Dead Burn. When you got Sebastian Vanacek, his style of just having that kinetic camera work in here, I thought it was such a cool style to bring to Evil Dead. This movie does push the lore forward a little bit too, which is cool. That is something that I was hoping here of like, are we going to expand things a little more? Are we going to uncover some things that we haven't found out in 5 movies yet? And they do a little bit, you know, it's not a huge expansion, but you get a little bit more into some other lore out there regarding different factions that were trying to contain the Deadites and contain the Necronomicons and certain weapons that can be used against them. And also on that note, this is a movie because of this weapon that is kind of like the central MacGuffin thing in this movie. It really puts the Deadites into a more active role in the movie, where every other Evil Dead film up to this point is almost like somebody just mistakenly unleashing them and then having to deal with the fallout. This one is about Deadites actually like closing in on a location because they're looking for this weapon to try to get rid of it. And so I liked that little bit of a shift. Like, ultimately, it still kind of makes for the same type of experience you would expect for an Evil Dead, but even just those little incremental changes, I think are mostly enough, even 6 movies in, to be a very entertaining entry. It's also a really well-paced movie. It doesn't really take a whole lot of time before it gets into the nasty, and there's very little downtime once this thing gets going. I mean, it's about a 2-hour film, but it feels more like 90 minutes, which nowadays is like a godsend because there's so many long movies or films that make them feel like they're even longer than they actually are. This is a very fast-paced, breakneck Evil Dead film. So you can tell they really did a lot of work, either in the writing or especially in the editing stage, to kind of trim the fat and just make this a very streamlined experience of like, get the Deadites there, get the family there, get the story going, and then just watch all hell break loose. And for the most part, I think that's what Evil Dead fans are really going to like. A tiny little positive for me that I picked up on that I would imagine is probably just me seeing something that's not actually there, and this wasn't really a heavy influence for Sebastian, but there were moments in this film where I couldn't help but feel like this movie was taking notes from Resident Evil 7 Biohazard. For those that haven't played that game, that is about like this very southern family, like out in the bayou, that gets taken over by this malevolent force. And so just that in and of itself kind of transferred over to the story here, where it's about a family kind of succumbing to the Deadites, but also just specific moments, especially dealing with the father character here. I'm like, that's Jack Baker. That's Jack Baker to a fucking T. I don't know if that's an accident, but damn, I like it. And the last thing that I will put here in the positive, in the spirit of me really
I didn't get Resident Evil 7 vibes.
being welcoming towards all these different filmmakers giving their own unique take on Evil Dead, you know, obviously operating within parameters and the rules and the lore of this franchise, but stylistically having a lot of carte blanche, which is what seems that they have done for the last couple. This one has a lot more of an action-centric streak to it. Like, a lot of the set pieces and the sequences that are the more intense pieces of the movie aren't necessarily there to, like, scare you or to really, like, fuck with you psychologically. They're a little bit more on, like, the exciting side, like actual fights and people getting thrown through walls and
absolute Insano style being integrated into everything. It has just been overly detrimental, overly annoying. And one in particular that I and everyone else on the planet was yapping about, just fucking flapping our gums on, was Instagram proudly coming forward with the fucking red nose honking it and all the clown makeup.
You know, tossed between rooms and having chase sequences, having a couple of car crashes. And, you know, I'm sure there's going to be some people that would prefer it stays more into the horror realm and tries to scare you as much as possible. But for 6 movies in, I appreciate the fact that we have arguably a little bit more of an action-centric Evil Dead movie here. So I like that as well. Moving on to the mixed, and the main one with this is that this is still very much a Evil Dead experience that you expect. And that there's good and bad that comes along with that. I mean, as I said, there are certain elements, there are certain stylistic changes and a couple little lore elements that do give this its own identity, that do make it slightly different than the previous iterations. But for the most part, this is a tried and true Evil Dead experience. And I think 6 films in, the fact that they can still get away with that and give you a really entertaining movie shows how strong this franchise is. But I think after this, they really need to start doing some work to make these movies fundamentally different than what we have seen before. Because this is still, yet again, despite some of the changes, an isolated setting with a small group of characters, with a deadite curse gets in there, and one by one, people succumb to that until one person comes out of the situation alive, covered in blood. And so there's a lot about this that is good with that, because you kind of want to expect certain things from this franchise and get the things that you want. And at the same time, 6 movies in, it's like, I think we're at the point where we can start really changing things up. Even if it doesn't work, even if somebody takes a big swing and inevitably all of us that are Evil Dead fans go, that's a little too far away from what I want from an Evil Dead film. I want them to start taking those bigger swings. I want to start seeing something that feels very different than the previous 6 films that we now have. Another thing that I will put here in the mixed column is that I don't really have an issue with this movie being so much more overtly in the horror and the depravity and kind of leaving the comedy and the slapstick almost entirely behind. You do get a couple of laughs, but definitely not the focus of this movie. It works for this one, but much like my previous point, I think this is as far as you can go with it. I don't necessarily want to see the next Evil Dead film trying to outdo this one and so on and so forth. I think that it would benefit for kind of pulling back a little bit, trying to embrace some of that silly side again, even if it's just silliness from how insanely over the top the gore is, because that's certainly something that is very much a key piece of this franchise as well. But I do want a little bit more fun in my Evil Dead films again. So hopefully this is not a continuing trend of like, let's continue to try to outdo what Fede Alvarez did. I think Evil Dead Burn has taken it as far as we can go. Now let's pull back some. And now moving on to the negatives, and the small one I'll get out of the way right away is that I didn't necessarily love the way that this movie looked. They very intentionally went for this very dark gray and black color palette. Now it's not too dark to where you can't tell what is happening. Thank God. That was a concern that I had a little bit during the teaser, was how low lit is this movie going to be? You can see everything. It's lit well, but I just think it has kind of this drab, kind of bland look about it. Now, there's certain sequences like the opening on the lake that I think that color palette really works during a rainstorm. I just wish that the color had kind of opened up a little bit more. I like my Evil Dead films to feel a little bit more dynamic visually, have a little bit more pop to them. This one, of all the ones we've gotten so far, kind of has the most boring visual look to it. Another small issue is that there is a section of this movie where there is something that has to be visualized entirely with CGI, and I didn't think it was all that great. It's not the worst CGI, certainly far from the best. I like the idea on paper of what they were going for a franchise that's always been incredibly impressive with its practicality, especially with the older and much more lower budget films. It just feels like a step too far from what I want from an Evil Dead film. Not the biggest deal in the world, but you'll know it when you see it. I also felt on the character department that this is maybe the weakest that we have gotten so far. There's not really anybody in this movie that I really latched into, even who becomes our protagonist didn't really do a whole lot for me. Some of that is intentional. This family is made to, from like right out of the gate, be these very unlikable, unsympathetic people. They're supposed to embody like this very cold and very unfriendly in-laws. And so some of that is by design, but I think there's ways you could still make them memorable. You can still make them pop despite them being intentionally an unsympathetic character. And the movie just never really takes the time to do that. So as soon as it starts and you're getting introduced to these characters that you're going to spend the movie with, just none of them really stood out a whole lot to me. And I think a lot of that is because this is one of the weaker written Evil Dead films. So obviously with the character side, I think there was a lot more to be desired there. But even on the story side, not that you really go to Evil Dead for a lot of story. Most of us go for the craziness and the Deadite action and the dialogue with the Deadites and the gore and, you know, the body deconstruction, all that kind of stuff. And you get all that here in spades. But this movie does, like the previous two films, try to have some kind of like a thematic through line. The Fede Alvarez film really dove into addiction. Evil Dead Rise very much was centered around motherhood. And this one is about spousal abuse and abusive relationships and toxic families. And it just felt very on the nose with what they were doing. And the previous two films tried to have some kind of like a thematic through line. The Fede Alvarez film really dove into addiction. Evil Dead Rise very much was centered around motherhood. And this one is about spousal abuse and abusive relationships and toxic families. And it just felt very on the nose with what they were doing. And I almost feel like the way that the movie was structured, I don't know if it was the choice in the beginning or just how they found it in the editing room, was a little bit bizarre in its execution as well, because we're introduced to our main character very early on, obviously, and you get a little bit of a tone that maybe the relationship, the marriage that is like the sparking point for the story is not the best, but you don't really get the full context of how toxic and abusive it is until like much later in the film, through these extremely random little like flashback moments. I don't know if like visually they were trying to convey like as this insanity is happening with these deadites that like her PTSD just kind of triggers and she just get like these little snapshots of these dark points in her relationship, but they're so random with the way that they're just inserted into the film. And so they don't really hit you until the third act that this is a toxic relationship and the family is just kind of like in support of all of that or like turning a blind eye to it. And that's really like the theme that is boiling underneath all of the gore. And I think it would have been much stronger to just lead with all of that. Just have like 10 minutes, 15 minutes of getting to know these characters, getting to know this relationship, getting to know her relationship with the in-laws, and then let all hell break loose. Doing it as kind of like a reverse engineering of that, it just didn't really land for me. And so even though you want to feel like triumphant, it is like a admirable message and you want to get behind the main character for kind of rising above that both figuratively and literally by the end, it just doesn't hit the way that it should to make that crescendo of the third act really punch. But even with those couple of things aside, my biggest personal issue with Evil Dead Burn is that I feel like they played very loose with the rules and how the Deadites work. This is the first Evil Dead film that I have ever watched where I was actively pausing and going, I need some explanation on how that works. I don't think that adds up. That doesn't quite make sense. Now, this has never really been a franchise that is like hard laid out exactly step by step how the Deadites work, but they've all kind of played within a certain parameter where, at least for me, I've never really asked those questions. I've never really had confusion about how people get possessed, how Deadites can do certain things, and how some are dead with certain actions and some are still living. Like, it just never really came up until this film. And there were multiple points in Evil Dead Burn where I was a little bit confused about how the Deadite got spread from this person to this person, why this person turned immediately, that person took their sweet ass time. One Deadite is killed through trauma to the head instantly. Another Deadite is intentionally doing very traumatic things to their head and walking away just fine. So that there was just so many points that it felt like they were just kind of inventing rules and bending things to fit what they needed the characters to do rather than actually playing by the rules that this franchise is always kind of built on. And on that subject, nothing was more egregious to me of just making absolutely no sense whatsoever and me just, at least for me, I've never really what they did. Then the post-credit scene. So I am going to spoil what happens so that I can kind of get into why it was an issue for me. If you haven't seen the film, there is a mid-credit scene and a post-credit scene. Make sure you stay for both of them. That is your warning. We'll put the spoiler warning up here right now. In the post-credit scene for this movie, they tease the return of Ellie Bixler. For me, if you haven't seen the film, there is a character from Evil Dead Rise. Presumably, she's going to play a big part into whatever the hell Evil Dead Wrath becomes in, was it 2 years that's going to be coming out? And while I don't hate the idea of Ellie Bixler coming back, because I think that actress did a phenomenal job, and I think that Ellie is certainly one of the more memorable Deadites of this entire franchise, was like one of, if not the strongest part of Evil Dead Rise.
Give me the second.
The logic of her coming back, and especially the way that they executed in this post-credit scene, made absolutely zero fucking sense to me whatsoever, and is nothing that we have ever seen anything close to that done in this franchise before, to where I actually think it's a complete betrayal of the rules of Evil Dead and how this franchise made absolutely zero part of Evil Dead Rise. The logic of her coming back, and especially the way that they executed in this post-credit scene, made absolutely zero fucking sense to me whatsoever, and is nothing that we have ever seen anything close to that done in this franchise before, to where I actually think it's a complete betrayal of the rules of Evil Dead and how this franchise has worked thus far. So you have the manager of the crematorium that we saw earlier on in the film when the husband character was going to be cremated, and she's walking through the hallway with her little girl, and they see this shelf with all these urns with these ashes that have been unclaimed, and she tells her little girl, oh, these are all the people that the families haven't come to pick up the remains yet, so we let them sit here for about a month, and then we trash them if they don't come. And she walks out, don't touch anything, little Susie, and then the little girl starts messing around with the little name tags. One of them says Ellie Bixler. And then just, you get like a moment in a mirror, and then just Ellie Bixler just shows up behind her, fully rejuvenated, snaps her neck and says, Mommy's back. How the fuck did they have her ashes, first of all? Like, she was put through this wood chipper and turned into human pulp. So what exactly was left to even burn? Second of all, she was pushed into the wood chipper with like 3 other characters that she merged with to turn into that giant final boss monster. And so how the fuck were they able to like sift out Ellie Bixler's body pulp with the other characters to be able to just have her there? Otherwise, all of them would have been rejuvenated behind her. And then third, and probably
He's out of line, but he's right. I was thinking I was thinking the same exact thing. How did she just reappear? Because, well, first of all, I didn't even know when I first saw her. I didn't know that was her ashes, because I wasn't paying attention. I assumed that they were the ashes of the William dude, the dude that was the husband of the main character. I think her name is Alice, the final girl in this film. But turns out that they were the ashes of Ellie from Evil Dead Rise, and I was like, well, how do they get those ashes? Which, how do they get those ashes? And then, but first I was thinking, she was merged with so many other characters. How can the evil single her out and then, make it to where she appears? And speaking of her ashes, is she a ghost? Maybe that's just the strength of the demon that he's able to manifest that.
probably most important, how the fuck does ashes that are in an urn allow somebody to be completely physically reanimated just because they had a deadite in them at one point? Like, what the fuck is happening? So, I mean, I could get into more things, but like that sequence, I really like borderline hated. I was like, oh, what are you doing? That doesn't work at all. In zero fucking way does that work in this franchise. But also, I just don't, that feels very Avengers to me. I don't want the Evil Dead franchise turning into Marvel. Like, I don't need post-credit scenes and a fucking team-up movie, and I don't know what the hell they're planning, but that doesn't excite me for what they're planning. So again, like, I'm not going to hold this movie accountable for what Wrath might be, and maybe Wrath will be awesome and I'll shut the fuck up and say, and hey, in hindsight, that was actually pretty cool. But this scene in and of itself, I didn't like at all. Anyway, all in all, Evil Dead Burn, another very solid entry into this franchise. I think for some people, it's going to be one of their new favorites. For others, it might be one of their least favorites, but I would imagine most Evil Dead fans are at least going to enjoy and dig what they do with this film, myself included. So if you love your Deadites and you love them mean, definitely go out this weekend, check out Evil Dead Burn, and let me know down below what your ranking is. I'm not sure if I'm going to do a ranking. Most likely I'll find time to do it, but I got a busy weekend, so we'll see. But all you Evil Dead fans, chime in down below. What'd you think of Evil Dead Burn? Well, that's it for this one, guys. If you enjoyed that, click over here for all of my 2026 new release reviews so far. I'm also going to put my most recent ranking that I did.
We're moving on.
Disney corporate called, and they need you to find the differences between this picture and this picture.
Yeah, take a look at those pictures. While it loads. The most brutal Evil Dead yet. So many have said that. So many.
They're the same picture. This video is brought to you by Factor. Go to factormeals.com/Merle50off for a special offer, and stay tuned after the video for more details. Hello everybody, I'm Dan Merle here with my review of Moana, the latest live-action remake from Disney, which is in theaters now. The first Moana was released a little less than 10 years ago, and the sequel was in theaters less than 2 years ago, so I guess we can look forward to a live-action Zootopia in the near future. I could give you a brief summary of the story, but that would be completely pointless because it's Moana. Not like Moana, not a take on Moana. This is 2016's Moana, word for word, scene for scene, often shot for shot. There's no innovation, not really even any adaptation. This is just the animated film shot in live action. It's similar to the remake of How to Train Your Dragon, but even that film, I think, took the original, simpler for its time animation and made it more cinematic, which is why I enjoyed that film a lot more. If anything, I think this remake is a downgrade in cinematic quality. I did something the night before watching this movie, which was both helpful for this review and might have been a mistake. I rewatched the original Moana because I wanted to be able to identify any differences in the new one. Moana is a really good movie, and it still holds up because it's not that old. I have shirts that are older than the original Moana. Now, some might say that this movie should be judged on its own terms, not solely but Disney has taken no steps to allow anyone to judge the film that way. It is a complete recreation of the first Moana, so it leaves no air to be compared to anything else. I guess this movie's best function would be for an audience that has never seen 2016's Moana, but with the advent of streaming, it's never really been locked away in the Disney vault, and it remains one of the most popular movies on any streaming service to this day. So as a remake, let's judge Moana on its strengths and weaknesses, and we will start with the performances. Catherine Logaia takes over the role of Moana from Ali Carvalho, who voiced her in the animated films, and there's nothing wrong with her performance. Her acting is pretty solid. She has a good screen presence and a strong voice, although I did detect some auto-tune from time to time, which is weird because it really didn't seem like she needed it. She's a very talented young actress, but because this film so exactly copies the original, I never really felt like I was watching Moana on screen. I felt like I was watching the most talented student at a performing arts high school taking on the lead role in a stage rendition of Moana. That, by the way, is an insult to this film's lack of creativity, not Logaia's performance. Maui, the silver-tongued demigod, is played in live action by his voice actor, Dwayne Johnson. Much has already been said about his ridiculous wig and muscled bodysuit, so I won't say any more, other than it looks like a Halloween costume and not a particularly great one. But for a role that Johnson injected with so much life in animation, I found his performance in live action oddly flat. It felt to me like he was going through the motions of being Maui instead of putting his own charisma back into the role, which is odd considering that this is his project. He produced the movie and it's very meaningful to him as it's rooted in his own Polynesian background. I think this movie's only shot at carving its own niche would have been for Johnson to also step aside and allow another actor to shine as Maui, but somehow I doubt that this movie would exist if Dwayne Johnson wasn't co-starring in it. I did like Rena Owen as Moana's grandmother, and Jermaine Clement also returns to voice Tamatoa, the treasure-loving crab. He's great, once again, though I think they probably could have just reused his old voice tracks from 2016. And no one would have been the wiser. So on a performance level, I'd say that this Moana is at best a wash compared to the original, but honestly, a bit of a downgrade. So what about the look of the film? Unlike every other Disney classic that's gotten the live action treatment, Moana was not a 2D animated film. The 2016 movie was made with state-of-the-art computer animation technology, and it still holds up. It's vibrant and beautiful, and all the live-action version does is directly copy that look, but often toned down for live action. Maui's signature song, You're Welcome, for example, which in the original jumps between all different types of animation, now just features Dwayne Johnson singing in front of a green screen with that same animation composited behind him. Shiny is pretty much a copy of the original sequence, but a little dirtier and dingier because Tamatoa is now a real crab who lives in a dark cave. And instead of Moana singing How Far I'll Go in a vibrantly animated ocean environment, live action Moana sings it in front of an obviously digital background, complete with harsh edge light to make sure that her hair is easy to blend with her environment. And overall, there is still a lot of animation in this movie. Moana's animal sidekicks, Pua and Heihei, are fully animated, though Heihei looks borderline monstrous when rendered as an actual rooster. The ocean gods, Te Kā and Te Fiti, are fully animated and designed exactly the same as they were in animation. And following the opening act on Moana's home island of Motunui, which features some beautiful practical production design, everything shot on the boat looks like it's against a digital background. This is not a live action reimagining, this is a live action rendering that almost exactly matches what you've already seen. And because live action doesn't allow for as many flights of fancy and visual flair as animation does, I think the look of the film is a push at best in some areas and a marked downgrade in other areas. Sometimes the animated format, without its tether to the real world, is just a better way to stage something. And when you ground it to real life, it loses some of the magic. I honestly don't know what Disney was going for here. I think Moana could have been remade as a straight adventure film, closer to what they did with Mulan, where you take the storyline, jettison the songs, and tell the story of Moana and Maui in a more dramatic way. But Disney saw what happened with Mulan amid all the cries of where are the songs and where's Mushu, and obviously they decided they were not going to do that again. But how is it any better to take a film that's less than 10 years old and good and do a worse version in live action? If I had kids who asked if we could go see Moana, I would be well within my rights to say, we have Moana at home, and be 100% accurate. You don't just have a version of Moana at home, you have this version of Moana at home, but as good or better in almost every way. Now, that's not to say that the film has no value. A lot of people obviously worked very hard on it, especially the art department who built Moana's village. I love that this film is a representation of Polynesian culture and live action, providing opportunities for a lot of Polynesian actors. And Catherine Logaya is a great discovery who will hopefully get even better opportunities in more original projects. All of those are good things. It would just be better if what worked in the movie was in service of anything other than an empty recreation of a movie that didn't need a remake. Anytime I say a movie is unnecessary, people often respond, well, is any movie really necessary? But 2026's Moana is a different kind of unnecessary. What charm it does have comes from the original material, and the shot-for-shot nature of the final product makes it kind of mystifying that this movie even exists at this moment in time. If all copies of the 2016 movie had been destroyed in a fire or a server crash or something, yeah, sure. But dollar signs seem to have been the only motivating factor for Disney here, and I'll be curious to see how that works out for them. Looking at past Disney remakes, even the ones that were largely copied from the original film, they all offered something new. Cinderella expanded and enhanced the story, as did The Jungle Book. Aladdin brought us Will Smith. The Lion King provided photorealism, if nothing else. Dumbo and Mulan reimagined the entire story. Beauty and the Beast production designed the hell out of that castle. Even Snow White mixed the story up a little bit and showed us a world where Snow White's 7 dwarfs were nightmarish hell creatures. Not all of those new takes worked. Honestly, I think very few of them worked, but they did bring something to the table. All Moana brings us is Disney saying, hey, I know you like this, so here's the exact same thing so you can pay us twice. You're welcome. Rating this movie is kind of tough because the original Moana is a good movie, and a lot of that good is transfused to this movie by default. But because Disney took absolutely no steps to make this film distinct from the original in any way, then I am also not going to judge it distinct from the original. If what you want is just to see Moana with people instead of animated characters, that's exactly what you're getting. You'll probably be satisfied. But if you're looking for anything different or new or even at times equal, then I think you're going to be disappointed. This is a lesser version of Moana, and because of its rigid determination to simply recreate instead of reimagine the original, I was also pretty disinterested and sometimes even bored watching it. It would be like making a shot-for-shot animated version of Jaws, but not changing anything. Sure, the source material's great, but why did you make this one? I'll just watch the one I already like. So on my personal scale, I'm rating
Okay.
Moana not a
sorry.
fan, with the caveat that if you haven't ever seen Moana, you might like it more, and kids will probably enjoy it because
I'm gonna put
it's
a
Moana.
Facebook
So those are my
I'm going
thoughts
to-
on Moana. Before we go, I want to thank the sponsor for this review, Factor. I'll bet a lot of you had a great July 4th barbecue. I know I sure did. But cooking a big meal like that at home isn't something you want to do every day. Sometimes you just want to take it easy, enjoy the summer, and leave the meal prep to somebody else. That's where Factor comes in, delivering fresh, chef-crafted meals right to your door. Factor's
I'm
weekly
losing my
menu
mind.
features over 100 rotating meals with flavors from around the world that are also built around your goals, whether you're trying to lose weight, eat more protein, support a GLP-1, and more. There's even a Muscle Pro collection to help you recover from working out. Next week's menu includes great options like scampi-style shrimp and salmon. For you seafood lovers out there, count me in. And no matter what the option is, I can tell you I have never had a bad meal brought to me by Factor. And each meal is ready to eat in just 2 minutes. Factor does the prepping, the cooking, and sends it right to your door. I love the convenience of Factor, and I think that you will too. Head to factormeals.com/Merle50off and use the code Merle50off to get 50% off and free daily greens per box with a new subscription only while supplies last if you sign up before September 27th. You can see their website for more details. That's factormeals.com/Merle50off with the code Merle50off. Thanks to Factor for sponsoring this review, and thank you for watching. Let me know what you thought of this new version of Moana down in the comments below. Until next time, stay safe, and I'll see you then. Bye.
I wish they quit including all these goddamn titles in this fucking shit. Like, quit having all these things to fucking me to touch. I don't want to do that. Stop doing it, man. God damn, son. Making it so goddamn difficult, man.
The 6th Evil Dead movie is in theaters now, and I've got a joke for you. What do you call a gathering of fans of the hand-drawn version of the Book of the Dead? Necronomicon. In theaters now, and I've got a joke for you. What do you call a gathering of fans of the hand-drawn version of the Book of the Dead? Necronomicon.
You're right. My bad. I was actually going to shift gears.
See the poop and the pee in the sea, and
I'm
it's
sorry.
smelly, and no one knows how far it
Please stop.
goes. I know. It goes for about an hour and 50 minutes, because Disney has themselves a brand new live-action Moana, baby. And it's just as useless, pointless, derivative, and all-around waste of time as the last 15 live-action Disney remakes. Let's talk about it in a spoiler-filled review, because there's nothing to spoil because everybody's already seen the movie! I apologize for coming in hot, shot out of a cannon, but, I'm a little annoyed by Disney these days. If you feel annoyed, feel free to sub to the show, Adam Does Movies. I'm on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. You can find me all over the place. You won't find me going to these live-action movies willy-nilly. I am a critic. I've chosen this stupid profession because I didn't know at the time, a decade ago, that I was just going to be going to rehash after rehash of the animated classics. At the time, Disney was still kind of peak, making great new stuff for new generations, and now here they are waiting in the shit, just shot for shot remaking all of the stuff that was so well beloved. And to their credit, people came out to watch. It remains to be seen how Moana does. It is very fresh. The early ticket numbers are not great for, a $200 million film. There's no denying people love Moana, though. The last film, Moana 2, which was mid-Moana at best, made over $1 billion at the box office. So I suppose it behooves Disney to keep doing this crap, especially if people are going to pay for it. The live-action Lilo and Bitch from a year or so back made over $1 billion. Snow White did not fare so well. I think that one was maybe a little too old, though, to bring back to get those nostalgia berries for folks bringing their kids. You have to hit that sweet spot. Lion King, Aladdin, Beauty and the Beast. That's when the late 30s, early 40-year-olds were going to the theaters as kids, kicking their feet on the seats. Mama, Papa, did you see Simba's Popsy? He jumped into the gorge and he's dead! He's dead! And so we get to relive the trauma all over again with our little tyke at the theaters. But Moana, being only 10 years old, seems a little bit of a head scratcher. Again, not for Disney. They're just trying to make the easiest cash-grabby money they can. But I don't know if audiences are willing to pony up again to go to a film that's very fresh still in most people's minds, especially with Moana 2 coming out just a year or so back. A lot of them probably rewatched the original in preparation for that one. And so, preparation, short for preparation. I should have clarified that a second ago. I apologize. So then the question remains, what does this new film have to offer? Well, nothing. Nothing at all. It is the same exact movie, sometimes down to each individual shot. And I went back and watched a little bit of the opener from the original Moana after seeing this new one, just to refresh my memory, because I swore, this is exactly the same. And yeah, sure enough, a lot of the shots, a lot of the storyboarding was just lifted right from the animated classic, but done worse. After 30 minutes sitting in this less than 2-hour movie that felt like 8, I shit you not, this movie was so freaking long and boring to sit through because I already know everything that's going to happen. There's no surprises. And with everything being worse, like some sort of a poor stage play, there's just no reason to sit there. After 30 minutes, I wanted to leave. I did force myself through this whole thing. I wanted to make sure there wasn't a new song that I could report on, or they switched something up in the story, because a lot of the live actions do try at least to attempt something new, and it usually falls on its face when they, we should probably address this sexist thing from the 90s. We don't feel Jasmine was powerful enough originally getting saved by Aladdin. We need to turn her into a strong female lead. And for a film taking place in Agrabah, quite frankly, it's about time. No. Moana is very much just the same character, but less bubbly and chipper because, she's a real actress now. She does not have the luxury of a skilled animation department doing all sorts of fun, wacky things with her face to really show that expressive nature. But to the actress's credit, she's very likable in the role. She can definitely sing, does not attempt at all to make those songs her own or put a little twist on it. No, we're doing the same exact film again. Not faring as well is Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson as Maui. What can I say except he's awful? We get to see what looks to be an 80-year-old Ozempic Dwayne Johnson in a tattooed bodysuit and terrible wig, phoning the hell out of this role. Out of all the characters he's played over the years, which is essentially just The Rock, Maui was his standout because he was so bubbly, so energetic, so lively. Not this time, baby. Now it's just Dwayne Johnson in a poor wig, stoically looking on, often very serious in tone. Even when he's doing his silly songs, he very rarely cracks that Colgate smile and puts any sort of expression or emotion into what he's doing. Maybe he was never all that great to begin with as Maui. Perhaps it really fell on the animators and the sound team to bring that character to life. I don't know, but it's just wild how he's in this, doing the same character that he voiced, but 50% worse. Also, they didn't bother to make him look like Maui. He's just Dwayne Johnson, a little bit smaller with a bodysuit on. In the animated movie, Maui is this big dude. He's strong, but also has a little bit of girth to him. He's a force to be reckoned with. He's a lovable giant. I never get one iota of love from Dwayne
proudly
Johnson.
proclaimed
He is so
always
cold.
engagement from
Even
your
when he
best
smiles and he's
pals,
trying to
in
be
the
playful
AI
with Moana,
universe
he
there.
comes off as he's better than her, never feels like a companion as this relationship starts to blossom. I guess what I'm saying is the whole project feels entirely emotionless, and that's kind of a thing you get with a lot of these live action remakes. And again, live action is doing a lot of legwork here. This movie's 90% animated. It's just Dwayne Johnson and this new actress, Catherine Lagaaya, I believe is her name, in front of green screens the entire time. Even if they're filming on set, I don't believe they actually filmed on a beach and used that beach. I think it was one of those situations where they were on the island with the ocean around them so that the animators could understand placement of things, and then they went in and replaced everything with a fake CG version. I'm not saying it looks bad, it just doesn't look real. And so again, what are we doing here at the end of the day? If you're not going to pull me in with the realism of the environment, which would make the movie a little bit different, you're just doing the same thing but worse. Inevitably, people push back and they say, "Sir, Adam," tears in their eyes as they often have, "why do you care if they're making these live action movies and people are seeing them?" Well, again, I've forced this job upon myself to watch and review films, so I do go. The problem is there's a lot of better stories you could tell. They could do new things over at Disney. Disney used to be this awesome studio full of innovation, and they would look to the future and had stunning animations. But now, now it's just, let's take what we had and just throw a new coat of paint on it. Outside of these two characters, there's really not much else to talk about. The grandma in the film, even her character, it's like a chore to get through her lines of dialogue. Grandma Tala in the original has a physicality
Looks like the audience is enjoying it.
to her. She's very expressive, very full of emotion and life. In the new version, there's an attempt there, but the actress speaks very slowly and breaks up dialogue in weird places. It's like, get to the point! But that kind of encapsulates my feelings of this movie in general. Get to
First of all, they're trying to make the movie look real. Not an animation. So you're not going to see them going and doing all these anime expressions. They're not going to do that because it's a live action movie. The only things that are CGI are besides the water and the landscape and the island is the creatures, the crab and the pig and the chicken. Hey. But yeah, they're trying to make it look more realistic because it's a live action. It's not supposed to be. They're not supposed to pop out all animated and shit. They're not supposed to.
To the point. In the first act, I wanted to go to sleep like 3 times, and I know I'm no spring chicken, but my God, this thing just took an turn.
I'm checking the score because on Kalshi, I placed a few bets, so I got to be sure to check the score at 7 a.m. Pacific Standard Time.
To get anywhere. If you're one of those people that never saw the original Moana, this is your first time, and you thought, okay, I want to go to the theaters and watch this. Don't. Just seriously, watch the animated one. It's way better. It's not even close. The music, the animation, the characters, even the story just moves in a much more interesting way. This new film, I'll give props in one major department, mainly because I saw it in IMAX, so I had that awesome surround sound, but the sound design was very good. The ocean waves splashing up against the side of the beach. The storms pouring down on our protagonist. Even though nothing looks even remotely realistic, it does pull you in a little bit. So I'll give them props there. And also, some of the visuals are really cool, even if they, again, like always, drop the opacity by about 30% from the animated version. There is some grand spectacle that was just recreated shots, again, from the previous entry. Now, it's been a minute since I have seen the original outside the little bit I watched at the beginning. It didn't jump out at the time to me. Maybe this is the case. But in this new version, I feel like they say Maui and Moana like 1,000 times each. Maui this, Moana that. You have greatness inside of you, Moana. Moana, you can do it. You were chosen, Moana. Moana. You're the great Maui. Everybody loves Maui. You can do it, Maui. Hey, do you know your name is Maui, it was just very main character energy and it wasn't necessary. But it could
Main
also
character
be these
syndrome.
things were more apparent and stood out more because the film has nothing new to offer. It's just a completely redundant, recycled pile of nothing. And so I found myself focusing on things I probably normally would have dismissed. But I think at this point in time, people know what they're going to get with these types of movies. So if you enjoyed them, if you went out and watched Lilo and shit and you thought that was a great time, if you thought that Beauty and the Beast movie with Emma Watson was just top notch, if you thought The Lion King CG garbage was one of the best things ever, it's one of the highest grossing films of all time, over $1.6 billion. Oh, God. Life is grand. Then maybe this will be for you. They didn't change a single thing, so you have that to look forward to. For everyone else, though, I can assure you, not worth your time in the slightest. I had young kids when the OG Moana came out. My daughter was 7, my son was 5. They watched that movie a ton of times. They love it. They had no interest in seeing this. And they are the target demographic. Actually, scratch that. I don't think the kids are ever the demo for these types of movies from Disney. The regurgitations are always squarely targeted to the parents who have kids that would want to take them out so they can relive the magic all over again. All right, I think I've said enough. This is becoming redundant as well. Let me know your thoughts if you were planning on going to this one, or maybe I swerved you away from it. Maybe I swerved you towards it. Let me know in the comments below. Again, I would love if you sub to the show, Adam Does Movies. I post movie reviews constantly. Would love to have you stick around for them. And hopefully I see you next time. Take care. Skidity, flidity, pidity, Thanks again for watching the video. If you didn't know, I'm a one-man operation here at Adam Does Movies.
Yeah, we don't give a damn.
This
Sorry.
video is brought to you by Factor. Go to factormeals.com/Merle50 off for a special offer, and stay tuned after the video for more details. Hello everybody, I'm Dan Merle, and I'm not wearing my glasses today. It's going to be a thing sometimes from now on. I'm here with my review of Evil Dead Burn, the 6th movie in what might be the most consistent horror franchise when it comes to quality, Evil Dead. 2023's Evil Dead Rise was directed by Lee Cronin, but he's off with his mummy, so the franchise reins have been handed over to French director Sebastian Vanecek in his English language feature debut. Those pesky Deadites are at it again, once more stalking and possessing those who dare to meddle with the powers of the Necronomicon. This time, it's a family grieving a recent loss who have all gathered at a remote, rotting house in the woods. A perfect setting. Hunter Doohan, who you probably know from Wednesday, plays a feckless aspiring author who is also the chief meddler, helping to summon the Deadites after going through his demon hunter grandfather's papers to research a book he'll probably never write. Suhaila Yaqub, who already survived a night of horror in the insane A24 film Climax, is his sister-in-law and keeper of dark family secrets. And there are a host of other victims in the family, including a grandmother with dementia, played by Maude Davey, and a particularly juicy part that most closely nails the traditional tone of this franchise. When I talked about Send Help in my Best of the Year So Far video, I mentioned how much Sam Raimi loves to make nasty films. Films where terrible events are heaped on characters to such a degree that they become demented comedies. All of that started back with The Evil Dead in 1981, and while Raimi hasn't directed an Evil Dead film since 1993, Disney corporate called, he is back as a producer. The 6th Evil Dead, and all of the franchise DNA is still there. Evil Dead movies usually walk a very interesting line. They are the definition of excess,
See the poop
but to such a
and the
degree
pee in the
that it
sea
usually
and
becomes
it's
completely divorced from
smelly.
reality. The new series of films, which began in 2013 with Fede Alvarez's Evil Dead, have really amped up the gore factor, and the characters in this film are penetrated, mutilated, bloodied, and dismembered in just about every way that you can imagine. That's nothing new. What has always set these films apart, though, for me, is that when an Evil Dead film is hitting on all cylinders, everything is also done with a twisted sense of comedy behind it. There was some of that in the last movie, Evil Dead Rise, which I enjoyed, but less of it in this film. While Evil Dead Burn does feel a little bit more original than Evil Dead Rise, I think I still prefer the last movie over this one by just a little bit. The second half of the film, or most of it, does tap into that completely unrestrained chaos that we've come to expect, so heightened that it becomes funny. But the first half, I think, plays it a little too straight. The extreme gore is there, but the sick sense of humor only comes in fits and starts. The glee disappears for a while, and the movie just feels kind of mean. I'd give a particular word of warning to animal lovers that there are some scenes in this movie that are tough to watch. Evil Dead films should absolutely make you squirm, but they shouldn't be unpleasant to watch. And parts of this one were unpleasant for me, although I think the movie does recover. What is consistent throughout the movie, though, is a great sense of style from Vanacek and his director of photography, Philip Lozano. Camera work is a big part of this franchise, and we get these soaring through the forest shots you'd expect, but we also get some truly inventive uses of perspective and framing, sometimes rotating whole rooms, sometimes showing us a scene through a mirror, and sometimes just letting the chaos play out in one seemingly uninterrupted shot. Evil Dead Burn is a visually interesting film, though it is uniformly dark and drab, and that helps to carry it through the portions that may not strike the right tonal balance. And then we have the blood and gore, and boy is there a lot of it. This movie may not be feeding deadites into a wood chipper like the last film, but the violence that we see is much closer and more intimate, which is worse in a way. Much of the movie features just 6 characters, so a lot of pain has to be inflicted on each one of them to get us to the end of the runtime. Watching one incredibly brutal sequence in particular, I was reminded once again of just how ludicrous the US rating system is. Sure, you can turn somebody's face into jelly over an excruciating amount of time in an R-rated film, no problem. But if you show too much of someone's private parts in the wrong context, well, that's an NC-17 for you. Evil Dead Burn may not be unrated, but it feels unrated, and I can't imagine how much more extreme the film 6 would have been without a rating. Sebastian Vanacek, as I mentioned, is a French director, and I think he brings kind of a European sensibility to this movie, making its horrors unavoidable and so overwhelming that the film itself sometimes feels nihilistic and often sadistic. Maybe that's why portions of the movie feel more like a funeral than a party. On the performance side, Suhaila Yacoub gets the most to do, but never really gets to tap into that Ash-like insanity that endeared Bruce Campbell to moviegoers. Her character is not just traumatized by the dead, but she's emotionally traumatized by the living. And I was rooting for her to make it out of this gauntlet of deadites. And everybody else, I think, does a great job of selling some truly twisted stuff. Twisted throughout the film. When I finish watching an Evil Dead movie, I feel like I've been through an experience. I laughed, I cringed, I sobbed, I spewed, I covered my eyes, I laughed some more, I cringed some more, and then it was over. While Evil Dead Burn does come dangerously close to putting the audience through the ringer without releasing the pressure valve from time to time, I still think that it works as a movie. It definitely has that Raimi-style nastiness, but could have used more of that devilish excitement that you can feel coming from behind the camera. Its stylishness works in its favor, as do the performances, the makeup and effects, and several memorable set pieces, minus an unnecessary climax after the climax that steers the film back a little too much into too serious territory. Still, I'm giving Evil Dead Burn an It's Good rating on my personal scale, which extends an already successful summer for horror. In a season where many big-budget franchise films are underwhelming audiences, lacking box office appeal, or both, it's good to see that horror can still produce results with a fraction of the resources and twice the creativity. So those are my thoughts on Evil Dead Burn. It is a recommendation from me. Before we go, I want to thank the sponsor for this review, Factor. I'll bet a lot of you had a great July 4th barbecue. I know I sure did, but cooking a big meal like that at home isn't something you want to do every day. Sometimes you just want to take it easy, enjoy the summer, and leave the meal prep to somebody else. That's where Factor comes in, delivering fresh, chef-crafted meals right to your door. Factor's weekly menu features over 100 rotating meals with flavors from around the world that are also built around your goals, whether you're trying to lose weight, eat more protein, support a GLP-1, and more. There's even a Muscle Pro collection to help you recover from working out. Next week's menu includes great options like Scampi-style shrimp and salmon. For you seafood lovers out there, count me in. And no matter what the option is, I can tell you I have never had a bad meal brought to me by Factor. And each meal is ready to eat in just 2 minutes. Factor does the prepping, the cooking, and sends it right to your door. I love the convenience of Factor, and I think that you will too. Head to factormeals.com/Merle50off and use the code Merle50off to get 50% off and free daily greens per box with a new subscription only while supplies last if you sign up before September 27th. You can see their website for more details. That's factormeals.com/Merle50off with the code Merle50off. Thanks to Factor for sponsoring this review. What did you think of Evil Dead Burn? Let me know down in the comments below. And as always, stay tuned right here for the latest in movie news, reviews, box office, and more. Until next time, stay safe, and I'll see you then. Bye.
I know you fucking did. Because you're a fucking idiot.
Dig through the ditches and burn through the witches and slam in the back of my Dragula. They should have played that at the end credits because it.
Yeah, that would have been better. I gotta go to the restroom real quick. Sorry. Be right back. Yes. Back at it.
It says burn in there. You get it. Hey kids, it's story time. So gather around and I'm going to bust out the Necronomicon. We'll have some milk and cookies as I read from the Book of the Dead in a brand new 2026 film, Evil Dead Burn. I saw the film last night. I was pumped for this one as I really enjoyed Evil Dead Rise. Most of the Evil Dead movies are a good time. I'm going to let you know if this one is as well in a spoiler-free review. Let's get to it. As I'm pressing on with this review, if you feel a sensation in your swimsuit area, that means you kind of enjoy what I'm saying, and you should probably sub to the show. All right, what we have here is a brand new film in the Evil Dead saga. We had Evil Dead Rise, Evil Dead Kills, Evil Dead Ends, Evil Dies Tonight. And here we are with Evil Dead Burns. Some of those were maybe from the Halloween franchise, but they're all kind of using the same naming convention, I've noticed. Now, I want to start by saying I was a little bummed out when I heard this was announced that Lee Cronin was not coming back for this one because I dug the look, the style, the comedy infused in the last Evil Dead Rise movie. That's the kind of stuff I look for. That dark, nasty humor mixed in with the blood and gore and creative kills. He would unfortunately go on to do The Mummy, which I did not like in the slightest, and I'm pretty sure those two are in the same universe, he said at some point, or people made it up online and I believed it, and I'm repeating it so that you also believe it. I don't know in actuality if any of these movies are connected in the slightest, because Evil Dead Burns feels very self-contained, which is a pro and I suppose a con for people that are looking for lore mixed in with the other films. There is some semblance, I suppose you could say, of reference, or you could maybe come to that conclusion in your own creative way. But for me, I did not notice anything really married to the previous entries. What we have here is a very standalone film with a new director, and not to use a tired phrase, but this movie was a very mixed hag. That's the expression, I believe. Well, I'm expressing it either way. On one hand, especially in the earlier scenes, it feels very amateurish, like almost a fan-made film is the vibes I was getting. The second half is way stronger. Some of the camera shots are very creative. That thing is flying around upside down. There's an awesome mirror reflection shot at one point, and it also just visually looks more striking, especially in the final act. Early on, though, the camera is really pushed in on a lot of actors, really up in their grills. There's also a club scene within the first, I think, 10 minutes of the movie. I don't know why directors keep doing this, but strobing, throbbing light effects are not pleasant to look at. They hurt my fucking eyeballs. And this one goes on for what felt like 5 minutes. It was a miserable scene. It looked ugly. It wasn't particularly acted well. And I didn't really care about anything going on. Again, though, the second half of the movie is so much better. It's shot way cleaner. There is room to breathe. It's more expansive. Even when it is quaint and takes place mainly in a house, you get a better feel of the surroundings, and it's just more competently executed than that early stuff. Unlike some of the other previous Evil Dead entries, this one does not have near the amount of humor they did, and that's a bummer, because that's what separates it from the other works. I mean, Sam Raimi really set the tone. There's always some of that nasty, mischievous humor mixed in with the downright disturbing stuff. I mean, he just came out with Send Help earlier this year. Very Sam Raimi. In comparison, this is more straightforward, violent, gross. Thankfully, it does have a lot of creativity in the kill department, but it also has a lot of just questionable head-scratching things when it comes to the story. Since this is a possession thing, of course, you got demons hopping into bodies, taking over them, and then they acquire superhuman strength. They can't be killed very easily. This leads to some very visceral moments for sure. However, I didn't really understand how the possession stuff worked in this one. In Evil Dead Rise, it made a lot more sense to me. In this one, though, the Book of the Dead seems like an afterthought. I don't even know why it's in the movie because it has no real purpose. And I also didn't really understand who could be possessed, how, and when. Sometimes I was like, oh, okay, I get why this person was taken over, but other times it just seems like whatever the story needs to happen, happens. And as for the lore, this one does expand on it some, for those wondering. The last couple movies I feel like were pretty straightforward, where there's the Book of the Dead, People read from it, they get possessed, and shit goes south, inevitably ending with the hero using a chainsaw to cut them into pieces. It's very formulaic in that way. This does subvert a little bit, add some new stuff into the mix without being insulting. Again, I was just kind of puzzled as to how this person was being taken over and why that person wasn't intervening. And, you know, can you possess two people at once? It seemed like it was always one at a time. It was very, very odd. Another big step down is the cast. I didn't find these folks to be near as engaging or interesting as they were in Rise. The evil mom in the last film was creepy. She did a lot of disturbing shit. And I was genuinely concerned for the well-being of the people in that house. In this one, you have a chick named Tina who gets possessed, and honestly, she's just too hot. The whole time I was thinking, yeah, I still would. Even when she's crawling around on the ceiling, drooling a mixture of saliva and blood into the face of someone else, I could not help but feel turned on. In fact, sadly, picturing that moment is now the only way I can achieve climax. One of the main characters we follow is Joseph. He's a total bitch boy. I'm getting pretty annoyed by the new Hollywood trope of our main lead guy has to be the biggest mamby-pamby bitch on the planet. It's fine to do it once in a while, but I swear every horror film now has the wimpiest loser, most unlikable, frustrating lead you can watch. Joseph is basically Bear from Obsession, and he kind of looks like him too, so I'm just annoyed by this guy. The main focus of this story is on Alice. She's in a toxic relationship with her husband, who, unfortunately for himself, not for her, has died. After attending the crappiest funeral ever, she heads over to his folks' place for a nice little sit-down meal to figure out what they're going to do with the restaurant they co-owned. And it's very clear early on that the in-laws are not huge fans of Alice. Now, any reasonable person would have said, hey, my husband's dead. Fuck you. I have no reason to talk to you people ever again. Alice is going to sit there for an uncomfortable amount of time, take a bunch of shit, and never once think about leaving. Little head scratching, honestly. If we could have found a better way to keep her in that house that made more sense, I would have been for it. Eventually, though, things are going to go very bad, and they're going to be stuck in this place, regardless of whether or not she likes these people. Now, messy story stuff aside, I want to get to the stuff that really works. Overall, I should make it clear. I enjoyed this movie. I think it's a step back from some of the others, but I still had a very fun time with this. Mainly because even though some of the character stuff doesn't work the best and the plot is a little bit iffy, as far as how the demon stuff is even working and how the book fits into this thing, there is a lot of action and gore and kills to keep you on edge and keep you hooked. Again, some of the shots in this are very interesting. They are pulling you into it, and it looks mostly demon stuff is even working and how the book fits into this thing. There is a lot of action and gore and kills to keep you on edge and keep you hooked. Again, some of the shots in this are very interesting. They are pulling you into it, and it looks mostly disturbingly real when a person blows the side of his head off or a woman cuts off her leg to escape the clutches of a chair she's strapped to. The movie's called Evil Dead Burn. There is a lot of fire in this movie. They really went all in with the Burn aesthetic. Oftentimes when you got fire, you got CGI. I'm sure they use plenty of it here, but there looked to be a lot of on-set practical fire, or maybe it was superimposing or some older tricks. Either way, it looked pretty damn good most of the time. I can't stand when you see the super fake flames of the fire. It just takes you out of the picture. So overall, production-wise, yeah, some of the cinematography and stuff is iffy early on, but it really gets nailed later on in the film. There's some really awesome stunt work going on too, so props to the stunt people. They're flying downstairs, they're getting chucked across rooms, they're super quickly climbing up the sides of a freaking house. There's a really great one take where Alice is crawling around on the ground, and you see people just flying all over, shit's breaking, there's stuff getting impaled in legs. While Alice is crying, I don't want to be here. When the movie opens itself up to be more playful in those moments, it's really shining. I just wish there was more of that. Stuff getting impaled in legs. While Alice is crying, I don't want to be here. When the movie opens itself up to be more playful in those moments, it's really shining. I just wish there was more of that. The film has a great score too. I love hearing that loud, bombastic beat in the background. It makes the scale feel so much more epic, even when you are tightly confined into this one space. So, long story short, if you're a fan of the Evil Dead movies, I think that this one will work well enough for you. I don't know if it's going to be anyone's favorite unless you're just in it for some of the brutal kills and some of the gore, some of the gross out moments. This one, I think, probably has the most out of all of them. I'm still the most put off in the best way possible by the cheese grater to the leg from Rise, but this one definitely has its share of cringe look-away shots. But I don't think you need to look away from Evil Dead Burn. All right, there you go. My thoughts on the movie. Overall, a very positive experience. Would love to hear from you in the comments below if you saw this one or now you're maybe a little bit more fired up to see it. Fire because of the burning. Let me know. Please think of subbing to the show. Adam Does Movies. I'm on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. Wherever you watch or listen, you'll surely find me. And hopefully I find you for the next video. All right, take care. Thanks again for watching the video. If you didn't know, I'm a one-man operation here at
One-man operation. I got a treat for you guys. There's something I've been wanting to check out. Just give me 1 second. Give me 1 second. I've been wanting to check this out.
Okay, so at the end of the session, we know that Nikki Freeman does get arrested because of what happened. Obviously, she still killed 2 people. And we have why, and we have more information on exactly what happened after the case. So let's just get right into it. What is up, Sixers? It is me, Jake Sixgod, and I have another obsession video because, well, I am obsessed with this movie. Yeah, and you guys are giving me some good views. So I keep duking these Jones out for you guys. And let's just get right into it.
It's all about the views,
Don't forget to leave a like, comment, and subscribe. And before we start this video, leave your comment and theory on what you think is going to happen to Nikki's character. I think she's still going to be around in like the universe, or like little Easter eggs about her. So let me know what you guys think in the comments. Let's just get right into it. All right, so this is the case file that has been released. That basically is like Easter egg to showing Nikki. I'm just still top to bottom, left to right.
SFPD.
right? And just show you guys everything. Alright, so as we see here, City of San Francisco Police Department, major crime.
Hold up a second. It wasn't in no damn San Francisco. Hold on. Give me 1 second. Where's Wikipedia when you need it? Got in Los Angeles. Hmm. Uh, it's set in a fictionalized Southern California town. Though it was filmed almost entirely on location, Los Angeles, North Hollywood, Burbank, and the San Fernando Valley. Okay, but San Francisco is different. That's North California, because that's where I live, in North California. This performance indoors setting was shot in a micro budget across the SoCal business and residential offices spaces. Little townies. I can totally see people going to these locations, kind of like they go to Michael Myers' house in Pasadena, California. You can know. What's this episode? Hmm? Let's just go.
Crimes Division, case file, MCD 260529. Let's just go. Dang, like look at Nikki, bro. Like, I just feel so bad.
I thought this. First of all, I thought this movie had 1990-esque vibes. I didn't know it was 2000s. Let me. Uh. Nikki Freeman case file. See what Reddit has to say. Oh. Oh, I can't see a full shot. Awaiting trial. I'm trying to speak into my mic. I'm bringing up on my other monitor. Pardon my big forehead. March 3rd, 2001, age 25. No stature, she's not. You know, I should dial this phone number to see if it works. Dude, I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna dial this phone number to see if it works. Eight seven six.
Phone number. Standard messaging and data rates apply. Consent is not a condition of purchase. If you want to be texted first, press any key now.
Eight seven six. I got let's have a look about how many, man.
Standard messaging and data rates apply. Consent is not a condition of purchase. If you want to be texted first, press any key now.
Okay, hold on. Exudation of the body. Oh, that's when that's what she did to Sarah. She decorated her body, desecrated her body, meaning that she mutilated it and took off the clothes and shit. She would probably get out though. Or she'll be like a extra in a film they show her in prison or the psychiatric ward, and then somebody else take the reins and be seeking her for answers. It'd be like somebody else would get a hold of the One Wish Willow, and then she's admitted to a psych ward, and this is probably going to be the file that the main character, the actual protagonist, of Obsession 2, what she's going to do is she's going to find this case file and be like, so this is Nikki Freeman? Can I speak to her? And then, it's going to show him speaking and talking about what happened to Bale and shit. I'm just saying, that's the common trope. You know what I'm saying? That's because go back, because you got to give her some kind of credit, right? You got to give her some kind of speaking role. And it's going to be flashbacks of what happened and shit, like the dinner scene. And it's just, that's what people think. Anyway, yeah. What am I looking at? In custody. I wish I can see this fucking shit. Let's see what the Reddit page is about. Okay. Nikki Freeman, give me that too. I'll read it on my other screen so I can see it. Nikki Freeman came to attention after reportedly exhibiting unusual or erratic behavior beginning on May 16th, 2026. On May 29th, 2026, she was apprehended in connection with the murders of 2 individuals in the San Fernando area. Okay, so San Francisco, SF can either mean San Francisco or San Fernando. The dude said San Francisco, but it's actually San Fernando. I figured it wasn't San Francisco.
Yeah, like look at Nikki, bro. Like, let's just go. Dang, like look at Nikki 9. It's MCD 260529. Let's just go. Dang, like look at Nikki, bro. Like, I just feel so bad. Like, are those like, Major Crimes Division? Case here, City of San Francisco Police Department, Major Crimes Division.
112. 113. Move, Mike. Not talking to myself, I'm talking to the mic.
The Evil Dead Rise team doesn't want this video getting out, but the public needs to know about the horrific incident that occurred before the screening.
Kandar! Kandar! Estrada! Estrada! Gandos! Gandos! That's what it is.
The Evil Dead Rise team doesn't.
Anyway, I gotta put that in. I gotta put that in the thing since I used it. Anyway, let's get back to it.
Case file MCD 260529. Let's just go. Dang, like look at Nikki, bro. Like, I just feel so bad. Like, are those? I wonder if like Freaky Nikki actually tatted those on her, or there's marker, but those look like actual fucked up tattoos. Can't even lie. Let's just go to the next part. Date of birth 03/03/2001. Okay, Nikki 25, Hispanic, 5 foot.
Yeah, you go ahead and say, who's the victim's digital device? Molly, recreational amount. MDMA. Carcinogenic. Oh yeah, MDMA, known as Molly or ecstasy. Cash. Oh yeah, from that fucking only $1 billion. Oh yeah, because of what Ian wished for. Damn, they stacked that shit. Look at that, they stacked that shit. San Fernando. Dude gonna look at, he gonna say San Francisco and it says right there, location of incident, San Fernando. Come on, dude. It's in the evidence.
Brown hair, black, okay. Yada yada yada. Basically it's just, Nikki's going over Nikki's date of birth, personal stuff. Apprehended, awaiting trial. Alright, this is the important stuff, guys. Apprehended, awaiting trial, in custody, monitoring. I can't even see what that says, bro. Something level high. Custody.
207.
Monitoring. I can't even see what that says, bro. Something level high. Accident date 05/29/2026. Oh, so this is a present day movie.
Risk level high. Music store quote, Cassell's music, citizenship American. Preliminary investigation. Preliminary investigative analysis suggests potential cartel links. A recreational amount of MDMA, that's the Molly that she took, was recovered from the suspect's residence. Preliminary investigative analysis suggests potential cartel links. That's interesting. During the execution of a search warrant, approximately $1 million in cash was reportedly recovered from the living room of one victim's residence. Evidence. I am reading backwards, of course. Evidence collected at the scene indicates one victim was mutilated post-mortem. That's Sarah. Yep. Classification: confidential, in custody. Not for public release. Apprehended. Homicide investigation, case number. Major Crimes Division. Damn, Nikki's gonna be in some trouble. When did the movie come out, bro? Let me find my mouse. The movie released May 15th, 2003. I get excited about this shit when I fact check shit. I get excited. Sue me. Release date May 15th, 2026. When was she arrested? On the 29th? May 15th. Okay, remember that. May 15th, 5:15. So, because it says right here, Nikki Freeman came to attention after reportedly exhibiting unusual or erratic behavior beginning on May 16th, 2026, which was a day later. It was released. They should have didn't do that though. They should have made so kind of like it's happening in real time. So May 16th to May the 29th. Let me open my Google Calendar up so we can get some. May 15th. Damn. Get out of that one. Get into my main one here. So 16th to the 5th, May 15th. Well, the movie came out May 15th, right? So 16 to 29. Damn, 2 weeks. They've been together for 2 weeks. What did I do from that time period? Give me a second. I'm gonna check out my A-list, my history.
Movie, which I do love, because you really couldn't tell that in the movie at all, and I do love movies like that. It makes the movie more timeless. Now let's go to charges. 2 counts of murder. As we know, yes, that is true. She killed Ian and Sarah. Love movies like that. It makes the movie 2026. Oh, so this is a present day movie, which I do love, because you really couldn't tell that in the movie at all, and I do love movies like that. It makes the movie more timeless. Now let's go to charges. 2 counts of murder. As we know, yes, that is true. She killed Ian and Sarah. I don't know why I had a blank like that, but as we know, yeah, she killed Sarah in the car with the brick, and then she shot Ian in the house. But it also says mutilation and desecrating a body. Oh yeah, because of what she did to Sarah in the house. I cannot wait to see the unrated version of. Apparently, the unrated version is so much better. I cannot wait. Financial crime note. Possible cartel link cash. Oh my god. So they think all, cause mind you, Ian wished for, look at the cash in the picture, but Ian wished for $1 billion. So they're like, no way. She's just in a house with 2 dead people and $1,000. So she's like, she's Hispanic. Like, you got something to do, which is fucked up. Incident dates 5/16 to 5/29. So, what? I want to know. I wonder what that starts and finishes from, because let's just read this. Alright, so it says, incident summary. Nikki Freeman came to attention after reportedly exhibiting unusual or erratic behavior beginning on May 16th, 2026. On May 29th, 2026, she was apprehended in connection with the murders of 2 individuals in the San Francisco areas. Evidence collected at the scene indicates one victim was mutilated postpartum during the execution of a search warrant. Approximately $1 billion in cash was reportedly recovered from the living room of one victim's residence. Preliminary investigation analysts suggest potential cartel links and recreational amount of MDMA was recovered from the suspect's residence in custody. Okay. So this says a lot. So basically this is way after, so this is a waiting trial. So this is like time after everything that has happened. And So it says basically the movie starts from May 16th to May 29th. Not even a month, which is kind of crazy. But so someone went to the police, or they just did a lot of good digging with. Well, it was a lot of people at the party. Like, I guess their friend group was enough people. Like, mind you, they're all dead. I guess Sarah's dad definitely would have known something else or something. But I'm thinking like the people at the party spoke up about everything. There goes the $1 billion again. Approximately $1 billion in cash recovered from the victim's residence living room. Cash. Cannot see those words. But no for the public, not for the public release. Oh, we're not supposed to be seeing the chat. But yeah. So Nikki's going to jail for the rest of her life, basically. Here's the thing though. Do you guys think she remember what happens? Cause one, if she remembers what happens, right? And they did like, a lie detector test and she wasn't lying, then what? But she would then still be convicted as crazy or some shit. That's better than being in jail. But, or prison rather. But, I just feel bad for Nikki, but also I feel like she's still gonna be. I feel like we're not done with Nikki's character at all. I feel like she's gonna help, and maybe like the TV show they keep like hinting at. That would be so dope. So that's what are you guys' theory on like what's gonna happen to Nikki? You guys think she's just done for the rest of her life? Do we ever see her again? I think we at least get like one Easter egg or one cameo, and in like a future thing, probably like a couple years down the line, obviously not anywhere close to anywhere his newer things. Well, in Kenny Barlock's next movie, we might get an Easter egg of Nikki like on TVs. I believe it was said that we might get, but that'll be it. But that'll be awesome to see of what exactly. So with that being said, guys, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Like, comment, subscribe. Peace.
Right, guys, I have watched Evil Dead Burn, and
Yeah, we'll catch you later. Anyway, let's get back to our main presentation. Oh, Moana?
Why?
I gotta do some digging into this.
That's right.
All right, folks, let's talk about Moana. We're not talking the animated movie from 10 years ago that is one of my favorite Disney movies ever. And I'm talking not just the modern era. I would put it up against, now it wouldn't finish at the top or probably even top 5 of all time, but it could go up against some of the classic Disney films because it has everything you want. Heart, adventure, great characters, a very talented voice cast. Of course, a couple of those names are huge, but they fit into the characters and the roles and everything works out extremely well. Most importantly, the music is great, accompanied by Lin-Manuel Miranda. Like, everything came together. It was lightning in a bottle, and it was beautiful. And I say it was beautiful because of that wonderful animation and the backgrounds and the use of color and a lot of things that make an animated movie stand out. So now we've got the live-action remake 10 years later. The Rock is back, as is Jermaine Clement and Hey Hey and Pua, and Clement being one of my favorite, more recent Disney villains, just the voice and the song, Shiny. Everything about Moana is amazing. And so, to take that animated film to basically do a one-to-one live-action remake that has been done by other movies fairly recently, well, I'm looking at you, How to Train Your Dragon. There is a way to do this, to recapture the heart and the spirit, and to even take a couple of members of the cast and bring them into live action and do it well, right? Do you still get that feeling while watching of, okay, does this even need to be done? Is there any point to this? Yeah, absolutely. There's no reason for them to do this other than money, but there is a part of me that looks at the kids watching this live-action Moana film and seeing that cool factor and like, okay, this movie that I know as a child coming to life and seeing all of this happening in real life, which, you know, as an 8, 9, 10-year-old, that's what you're experiencing. part of that is cool. And so all of that being said, why am I a hypocrite? Why do I look at myself in the mirror or the computer screen right now and say, Austin, you're a hypocrite? I say that because I liked the How to Train Your Dragon remake. I don't think I liked this Moana remake, even though they are both 1-to-1 remakes, and like 90%, 95 even, is the exact same thing. Obviously not the exact same thing, but you know what I mean, right? The story, the dialogue, the way it progresses. I am A-okay with Disney wanting to take certain properties and say, I think we can do this a little better, a little different, the stylistic, creative choices to take these films and try to change them up a little bit, even though a lot of them have fallen flat. I do respect the idea of let's change some things up and try something different. Now, would it all just be better if you made a new movie with a new idea? Yeah, but that's not going to print money. And studios are looking at this, remaking classic films, I say classic, 10 years ago, as an opportunity to print money. Now, maybe Moana is the start of something new, because I don't think this film is going to print money. It will make money, but will it print money? I don't know, because I am starting to feel the fatigue. And as I'm watching this, I was feeling this void when it came to the emotions that I felt during the original Moana, even though I'm getting the exact same thing happening on screen. And I think a big part of that is, first of all, I'm missing that stunning animation that made Moana. It was so gorgeous to watch for the first time in the theater. And even watching Moana 2 fairly recently, which is a very forgettable story and frankly kind of a forgettable sequel, the animation still looks great. Maybe not quite as good. It was supposed to be a television series, so that's probably why, but still great. And so I'm watching this Moana live action remake and I'm thinking, is that just missing that one artistic expression, animation? Is that why I'm feeling the way that I'm feeling? Or am I starting to feel the studio, Scrooge McDuck swimming in the money bags? Is that what I'm feeling while I'm watching this? Because my mind's racing thinking, they just did this to make money. And I know Dwayne Johnson has a passion for this. You can see it and feel it, and that's awesome. But Dwayne Johnson is not making the decisions here. Well, he does sometimes. But this is, let's not recapture the formula, but recreate the formula that made Moana successful, except we don't have the animation, except we don't have the style that made that original movie so creative. And if I am wanting to go back, my alarm's going off. It's my alarm, everybody. I have to take my pills. I'm getting old. Maybe that's it. Age. That's why I'm so bah humbug. And I'm not saying Dwayne Johnson's not trying here, okay? But that's another thing I'm missing. With this 1-to-1 remake, not really all that amazing performances. The supporting cast, they're just kind of there, okay? Jermaine Clement's voice, that was working. Dwayne Johnson, at times, you can tell he wants to be there. But there were other times where he and Catherine, who plays Moana, this version, and I do think she is trying her hardest to kind of recapture what Moana is, the spirit, and I was feeling that at points. But when they're on screen together, compared to when Maui and Moana's on screen together in the animated film, you have the chemistry in that original Moana film that carries us through some of these moments, and it's so fun to watch. And here, it's a little awkward. They're good, but it's a little awkward with the chemistry. And then the supporting cast on the island, mother and father, like all these people, grandma, that play an integral role in this story, it's fine, but I wasn't feeling it like I was from the voice, feeling it like I was from the voice cast from the original Moana. And so, and I've been seeing a couple of people on the Twitters saying, well, it's a 1-to-1 remake. How could you like this one and hate this one? How in the world could you feel that? No. That is very basic insight. That is very easy, criticism, nitpick of criticism and nitpicks. To say that means you're not taking into account the lack of heart in version number 2 compared to version number 1. Because I wasn't feeling that hard. I was feeling the studio wanted to remake this to make money. And I was frustrated because I'm looking at some of these other Disney films that are much older.
No.
Okay, say what you will.
That's
yeah,
right.
we're old, folks. Okay, much older. Treasure Planet, Atlantis: The Lost Empire. My God, you could look back at some of these that didn't even make a splash. And Home on the Range, okay? Disney, and that movie wasn't very well acclaimed. I enjoy that movie. Disney at least tried to be original with these films. These are films that you can take and do something interesting with in live action. Maybe not Home on the Range, but Atlantis and Treasure Planet. If they were to remake that, something that's built for live action, I say, okay. And I'm sorry. If you're going to do something like this, I need to feel that it warrants it. Okay, How to Train Your Dragon, 1-to-1 remake, it at least kind of warranted it because you've got the original creator involved. They're going and filming on location. Okay, Moana just kind of feels like it's in front of a green screen. The visuals are bland. Didn't love the style. Editing's a little clunky.
2001.
You even look at some of the behind-the-scenes photos and videos.
Hold on. All right, look. March 3rd, 2001. All right. Check this out. March 3rd, 2001. They used her real actual age and her real height. 5 foot, just 5 feet, 25 years old. Let's look back at the Reddit post. Her real height is exactly that. 5 feet, 105 pounds, approximately. Yeah, it's most likely this case file is AI generated just because it used actual information about Indy Neverity. Look, see? Yes, fake news. The story didn't feature a post-credit, mid-credit, or after-credit. Some people are saying that it's AI generated. Like, if you just look at the comments, oh wait, that's Instagram. Let me go to Reddit comments. Let me edit out of it. AI slot. Where is this from? It's AI generated. Cartel money. It's the money that Eon wished Eon wished for, not the great detail to include. Honestly, no, it's not. It disappears once Ian dies. I don't think so. I don't think so. Not money. I think that's unique to the wish of her loving him. On the box it says the wishes are irreversible. On the phone he doesn't give much detail at all on our wishes, just the wish he made. I think it's just as likely the money doesn't vanish. Yeah, because when he wishes... When Bale wishes for Nikki to love him more than anyone else in the whole fucking world, that's as long as he is alive. Because she cannot love a dead person. That's what makes sense. So the wish can only be active as long as Bale is alive. Once he dies, the wish has no choice but to leave because Bale does not exist within the living. So therefore, how could she love Bale when there is no Bale? The money, however, is different. When Ian wishes for that, he just wishes for $1 billion. The dude should just I would have wished for $1 trillion. Fuck that. Or quadrillion even. Or $5 My point is, just because Ian dies doesn't mean that the money would disappear. The money would still be there because that's a actual object compared to like love. Because we can't love a person. I mean, I still love my mom, obviously, but, you know, she doesn't exist. But when it comes to being in love, it's like, first of all, she was never really in love with them. Second of all, the wish, doesn't make sense. So why would you obsessively be in love with somebody who doesn't really exist anymore, who's not alive? The money is different. So it's a different set of physics or metaphysics or whatever. The whole AI, I don't know, is this image AI generated? I don't know. It kind of looks like it could be. Like somebody probably put in Chat GPT or even Sora. Make me a case file for Nikki Freeman from Obsession. Matter of fact, I'm gonna do exactly that. Ready when you are. I'm ready. And I think you gotta be a little bit specific with the instructions. Let me get her actual name. Real, I'm gonna say date of birth instead of DOB. Let's see how accurate it is. Yeah, look at the screenshot. Phone number, email address. Let's see how this is. I missed the citizenship, my bad. Copy this. I'm possessed by the evil from Evil Dead. Oh, it's too responsive. I wonder how many people have tried this. Case number is different. Mm. Mm. L color, eye color, both brown. Let's compare it. 105, 5, Hispanic, female. Build petite. Petite build, bro. What does that even mean? Someone who is small, trim, and dainty in stature. Like me, I guess. Oh, sort of. I'm protected. Yeah. Emotionally unstable under supernatural influence. Spectators during paranoia manifestation. That is only one instance. I'm gonna say Spanish because what are you Spanish for the? Federal Paranormal Incident Task Force. So, Pitif, threat orange, threat level orange, incident type paranormal, psychological homicide investigation, wish sneaky, student vital as portrayed, vital, residence withheld, physical description, DNA sample secure, fingerprints unfound. Reports of duplicate manifestations sharing her appearance. Witness testimony perfects reporting his characters, some behavior, some describing Kate as compassionate, fighting others report aggressive, obsessive, conduct, explicit behaviors in relations. Several emotional. Multiple versions of Nikki. Yeah. Sorry, what? Hmm. 2001. 2021, I'm sorry. I forgot how old she is. She's like, what, 14 or something? Plot. Finney, I guess. 13 years old. So we're looking at a 4-year gap, approximately. So she's 11. She's 11. So you're looking at, what, 11 and 13? Give or take? Hold on. Oh, so he's 19, she's 17. Yeah, my bad. 19, 17. When did it start? I'm sorry, I Jepson. When was it released, the first one? 2000, okay. So 2022. We're looking at 2022, and I guess 2025, that's like 3 years, right? Yeah, I'm doing it. 2025. October 2025. June. About about 3 years. So, I'll tell you, I don't know. She's 17 years old. She's like 15, I guess. No, 14. That's the age. Because if you look at her, I'm just trying to figure this shit out. Okay, 2021, 2025, that's 4 years. So if she's 17 years now, it's 13 when she was actually filming it. I think she was 13, but her character is 11. Whereas Finney is 13. But the actor playing him, Mason Thymes or whatever, forgot his name. Put on top. Yeah, he was 19 now, right? So I think his first thing was actually Black Phone. Well, one of them. So I'm not really good at this shit. I'm sorry. God, I'm not good at it. How if he's 19 years old and you take 4 years? That's what, 15 years old? And if he's 15, she was 13. So he's playing a 13-year-old, and she's playing an 11-year-old. They're basically playing characters that are 2 years younger than they actually are. He's 13-year-old playing, no, he's 15 playing 13, and she was 13 playing 11. Basically. So we're looking at a 13 and 15-year-old again. She looked like she was 8. She was small. She looked like she was like 8 or 9. The character is 11 years old, and Finney looked like he was 11. Finney looks like he's 11 or 12, while his younger sister looked like she was fucking 8 or 9. But I heard that she's 11 now. She's asking, and she's saying what the fuck to Jesus, like Jesus, what the fuck? She looks like she's 8 or 9. She's riding on her damn bike like she's 8 or 9. Like really about 9. I'd give her 9 years old, but 11. I don't get it. Because her younger sister, who's sorry, I don't worry about Who's Bonnie? Who's another Bonnie? I gotta watch Toy Story 3. But what I'm saying is that she's basically 17 years old right now. And her sister is Violet, the woman from Megan. Megan. Got a thing open up twice for some reason. That's the girl from Megan. And Violet is, of course, 15 years old right now. She's getting older, but I remember she was in the first Ant-Man. I believe Doctor Sleep. She was Violet in Doctor Sleep. I don't remember that one. Separation. I'm sorry. I do remember her in Black Widow. And Black Widow 2. I mean Black Widow and not Black Widow 2, but the Thunderbolts. I remember her in that. There's two things I remember her from was in the Thunderbolts and Black Widow. There it is. County of Oshkosh. Oh my god. NF 2006. And UK. Not quite. I should post this. This looks like a child, bro. This don't look like a 25-year-old. I mean, maybe. But this is, first of all, this is two different pictures entirely. This looks like some Mexican that ICE just picked up and is what's the word for it? Sending them back to Mexico. Like she's awaiting. You know how when ICE picks them up, I don't know if they do mug shots, but they basically put them in jail before they send them off. Multiracial American 103, and I think this file said 105. Yeah, 105 pounds approximately, which is really not that much difference to the writer. I'm not liking this. This one looks much more professional. This person had to use Sora. This looks like a real deal, though. This person had to use Sora. Because it's even got the tattoo and shit, so it has to be real. It's even got the same dress. And she looks roughly the same. This has to be... This is definitely fake. This doesn't even have the same clothes. Yeah. Oh, I see. You got two different ones. Image one is better because this one's got inaccurate dates. I don't know. Compared to this doesn't look like AI because it's too black and white. Anyway, let's get back into damn. Mm. She does because she witnessed everything that happened. Full type. Like they shit with fucking Companion that came out last year, which is funny because that's my all-time favorite movie from last year. It came in January, but like the blood is perfect. It's just a wrong costume. Fucking, I'm sorry. Oh, we gotta stop this. No, don't do that. Oh my god, AI. Totally AI. Oh, never mind. Somebody's dressed like that. Damn, they went all out. I could totally see a cult following. I'm trying to find the damn image. I can't find it. I will. How about we? Is this San Francisco? Combining the two films? It's just a little bit flat. By the way, she's doing a thriller dance and Beat It. Long song. She mixed two songs. Cause this is thriller. Whatever. No. Oh, so that looks like her companion right there. I was getting total companion vibes when I first saw that. Because she looked similar to the companion. Bitch doing it again.
But my hope will never die.
Trap. Fuck it.
I hate it when they do shit. Tell me shit. I gotta get back on. Too many damn fan videos. Too many. Okay, let's see about the AI. What's the AI thing? Cool. Okay. Oh, I can't do it. Oh,
of this movie. They took a lot of the color away, which baffles me because Moana is such a colorful world. It's a colorful movie. Why are they taking the color away? And so you've got a lack of heart from a lot of the cast members. You got a visually bland film, maybe not visually bland, but visually bland compared to the original Moana. And then you've got something that you just feel like is working at times because of the story in place. And the story in place is wonderful. And so I didn't have a terrible time watching this movie because I love the story. And it was fun seeing it in live action at moments. But every moment, every scene, every sequence that I loved, I kept going back and saying, well, it was better in the other one. And there was never a moment here that outdid the moment there. And for that, I am a little frustrated with this experience. Kudos to Dwayne Johnson, and kudos to Catherine for coming in and I think playing a decent version of a live-action Moana. She gives it her all. He gives it his all. That's all you can ask for our main duo. Well, except for some better chemistry. I'd probably blame the direction there. But I'd love to know, what did you think of the live-action Moana? It's a very simple review. I probably took way more time than I should have. Leave your thoughts down below. Did this warrant a remake at all? Thanks for watching. Evil Dead coming soon.
Adam does movies. I also have a full-time job. I got a family to
Why? That's right.
All right, what's up, Flick fans?
Big fans, he calls us.
Let's jump right into this and talk about what works with Evil Dead Burn. We'll talk about the summary here in just a second, but if you are a fan of this franchise, I think while every movie isn't the exact same in quality, for the most part, this has been one of the most consistent franchises. Even with the 2013 Evil Dead that didn't have the best reviews at the time, I think more people have come around to appreciate that, to where these latest few movies, while different from the OG Evil Deads, they've been doing something, building something a little more special than maybe we're willing to give it credit for. And so Evil Dead Rise, I was a big fan of. I think that movie has more, focus on its characters, a bit better of a story, even though it's kind of a generic story on its surface, and definitely some memorable moments. Where Evil Dead Burn thrives is with its direction, with its hardcore, intense, bloody, flamey and fiery visuals, as you can see in that photo, that take it to the next level. Whereas I feel like the story here is a bit more simplified, especially when you get to the point where everyone's kind of huddled together. You know where this is going because one of our characters, he's kind of setting things up. Now, when it goes off the rails, it goes off the rails to a degree that we didn't see in the last film. And it is as messed up visually as you would expect it to be. But our director does a great job at honing in his craft during those sequences and providing some camera angles that I thought were spectacular. Like I said, the story is simple. This woman seeking solace with her in-laws after her husband dies. So you got a brother, a son, a husband, someone that was beloved by this family. And the family, the older members of the family aren't a big fan of this girl. They make it known. But as things start to get a little more messed up, and the Deadites come into play, which is where this franchise thrives, that's when the emotions get on, again, another level, full display, and the madness starts happening. Let me tell you, I think the characters here are pretty decent. Ma Davey plays someone who feels more in line with what a lot of people love from Evil Dead, but Alice, who's kind of our lead, Joseph, a face you're going to recognize, I think he does a solid job, and then Edgar, aka the most sinister character in the story. I mean, when you start to see that change happen, you're already unsure that this guy is not off the rails, because he seems a little off the rails in the beginning regardless, but when you start to see that change, and for good reason, right, his son is dead, her husband's dead, and so the events that set this off, they're tragic, devastating. The movie starts out on a very emotional note, But I was trying to figure out, is there going to be more to this story than just suffering and struggling through those emotions? And there obviously is, but that story in itself is about as simple as it gets. The real star, this is where I was going with this, is Sebastian Vanacek, who directs the hell out of this movie, man. And it's not just the visuals, right? I think he gives good, sinister leeway for some of these actors to go from someone you're sympathizing with to someone that is doing unspeakable things to other characters in this movie. But he brings them to that point and gets these wild and wacky performances out. And of course, visually, right? I mentioned some of the shots, the cinematography. We see that one take in the living room where our character's just kind of crawling while all of the madness is happening, but it extends beyond what we saw in the trailer, man. Everything going on. There's a fight here, and mom's doing something over here, and you can just hear the banging and clashing. I think the sound design is spectacular, especially towards the end when there is a fire. I love the way that the sound was bringing me in almost as much as the emotion, which, again, is rock solid, but it's more so all the visceral things happening. That's what keeps you going as a fan of Evil Dead. And then you got this score that plays almost as important of a role as a character would in this film. So all of that comes together to make this wild experience at the end, the last 30 minutes, I thought was just a great display of impeccable filmmaking. Now let's talk about what didn't work as well. And I'm not going to say a lot here falls completely flat. What I really wanted more of is we get subtle, humor that kind of shines through at points. I think our grandma does a great job of adding that in when the moment feels desperate and dire, because there's a lot of that in this film. And I don't think it walked that line as well as some of these other Evil Dead movies have in the past, because they'll throw that in. And you don't want to make it too marvelly, right? It has to be a very certain style of humor, but when it throws it in, it does work here. Worked a bit better in Rise. Obviously, the OGs, we know why those are so fun and entertaining to go back to. And so, was Evil Dead Burn horrifying or more visceral, bloody, and gory? I'd put it more in that camp, right? I was never fully scared, but the imagery, it is very haunting, especially when some of the violent acts are happening towards the end. Holy moly, it gets deep, close, and intimate with our characters while, things are coming apart. Not as gross as The Mummy earlier in the year, funny enough, from the director of Evil Dead Rise, but gross in a different type of way, in a more violent type of way, which is fun. But I wish there was a little more humor, some things to spice this kind of bland story up, because at the end of the day, it is a very generic story. But what allowed this to break through beyond that is the direction, which is just fantastic here. And so I liked Evil Dead Burn. I just don't know if I liked it as much as the previous entry. And if you guys want to see it, if enough people like this video, you guys share it, whatever you may do to help this channel. If you want to subscribe, that would be awesome. We will do an Evil Dead ranking, so stay tuned, whether that's a longer video or short, whatever you all want to see. Thank you so much for watching, supporting.
Let's go forward with Moana.
10 years later, and Disney's already remaking movies that are only a decade old, guys. Moana, the live-action film, is here, all in full with Dwayne Johnson's luscious locks. And let me just tell you right now, it's exactly what you expected. Scar Money, welcome back to a brand new movie review. Today we're discussing the live-action Moana movie, which of course is about Moana, the chief's spirited daughter who is chosen by the ocean to restore the stolen heart of the goddess Tafiti. When a dark blight threatens her island, she sails to find the legendary demigod Maui to help her return the stone and save her people, and in general save the world. Now, the original Moana for me is a class act, an incredible movie, and an animated movie that has only grown on me over time. I have a couple gripes here and there with certain things, like the whole crab shiny sequence. Just, it kind of drags the pacing down a little bit for me, and certain choices in the third act. But bar none, I enjoy that movie thoroughly. I've seen that movie so many times, especially since living with my wife. Once we moved in as a boyfriend and girlfriend, we just ended up absolutely loving that movie. It's one of the rewatches we would just throw on constantly. Her Jack Russell loves that movie. I don't know what about it is, but the original Moana is special to that degree. And when they announced that they were doing this live action retelling of it, I thought this is
this is maybe the dumbest choice
Yes.
ever. This movie's not even a decade old. Why do we keep doing this? Go remake stuff that deserves the limelight, guys, like Treasure Planet, Atlantis. I could literally name so many more off the top of my head, but those are like the two bleeding ones that Disney fans are like begging you to remake. Just do it. I don't know if they ever will. I don't know if they ever will. They keep doing all their class act ones, and some of them have turned out to be surprisingly fun, and some of them have turned out to be terrible. It's funny because I think when the first initial trailer came out for this, I think all of us expected this to be terrible. And I can see people saying it's terrible, but I'll just tell you this right now. It's not terrible. It's not great. It's not good. It's just fine. It's just fine. And mainly that is because it is such a carbon copy of the original movie that for the most part, I just sat there wondering, why am I not watching the original? Like, as much crap as people give the Lilo and Stitch live action remake, at least they made some changes. Some people liked the changes, some people didn't. And you can go through a bunch of these different ones. Mulan, which I know there's a lot of hate for that one, but at least they tried something different. Maybe they should have just adapted that one purely. I do kind of agree with that on hindsight. But I think the list can go on and on. You look at so many of these live action remakes or live action kind of Disney movies like Chip and Dale Rescue Rangers, and it's like, that was unique. They're doing something different with the IP. I'm not saying that they needed to change so many of the different storytellings, but I think there was a way to showcase this and do something a little bit more unique with the story of Moana and with the culture here, and maybe make a little bit more of a serious story with having still some of those kid undertones. And I just think that's one thing that they have not been able to get right with these live action films overall. I think the best example is the Cinderella live action remake, if I'm being completely honest with everyone. I think that is the ideal representation of what these films should be like. Even also Cruella, which I thought was also kind of surprising. Focusing on the live action Moana and putting it against my side of like just my pre-notion thoughts of like, this movie should not be remade. It's only 10 years old. Sure, we're here. Even though we're here, it's still hard to not compare. And people are going to compare. Every single thing you love about the original is just watered down in this, and that's the truth. Well, if it's enjoyable, like I'll tell you right now, I think Catherine, I'm probably going to mispronounce this, but Catherine Lagaria, I thought was fantastic as Moana. I think she's actually really incredibly charming in this. I think she actually embodies a lot of what Moana is, and it sucks that she's stuck around a film that is going to be compared and contrasted to so many different degrees, but at least she embodies the heart of who Moana is, and I do have to give a shout out to that. But a lot of people are going to look at this mainly because Dwayne Johnson is Maui. Now, I know this was kind of before the Dwayne Johnson resurgence, it seems like, from Smashing Machine, which was a film that I thought was just okay, but his performance was so damn good in there that I was like, please keep doing more of that in your career. And like the next 5 films he has lined up to film after Jumanji 3 comes out are basically all films that are like heavy acting capabilities, and I'm super excited to see that next chapter of his career. But him being Maui was not the right choice. Now, I love him as the voice of Maui. I think he embodies that character perfectly. I love his song, You're Welcome. It's maybe one of the top 10 best Disney songs ever, and I genuinely mean that. And it's still a bop here. I'm not going to lie. It's still kind of a kick, but it just feels like it's Dwayne Johnson cosplaying as Maui. I really do think they should have recasted this role to a lot of different reasons, but like it looks weird with the hair. I mean, it's been beaten to death in the trailers, and I hate to say that, but it does seem weird. And even the bodysuit, the tattoos, feels a little bit weird too. Some parts of it kind of blends well, and honestly by the end I kind of just forgot about it. But from the first part of the movie, I just kept going, that's Dwayne Johnson, that's not Maui. As when I look at Catherine, I'm like, that is Moana. It just really sucks that it feels like a cosplaying of some sorts than anything else, and it really bugged me for a lot of the movie, and I always kept trying to put it aside to really push past it. Because for me, Maui is one of the hugest standouts and one of the best characters that Disney's honestly put out in, again, the last 10 years. I love that character with all my heart. It kind of seemed there, and honestly even his performance isn't as lively as personally I think the original Maui performance was in voice. That's the direction that they were trying to go this time around with the character and specifically some of the backstory to the demigod, but I actually wish the tone of the entire film would have also filled that as well. I know these are a lot of buzzwords and a lot of different things kind of like formulating together. It's just, that's kind of what these Disney live action remakes sometimes make me do, and see like the reason for why this was being made other than just money. then I'm kind of just at a loss for words, if I'm being completely honest with you all. Especially when they're so close to the original. There's like a fine line that you need to walk. And for me, if you're going to remake the original, then you have to make it better. That's what's like weird about reviewing this movie, is that like basically I can just say is that like every single thing that you like about the Moana movie or love about the Moana movie is in this movie. But it's just a watered down version of it. If you like a musical set piece, the musical set piece is probably still almost one for one the same. It's probably still as colorful, like the Shining sequence or the You're Welcome sequence. They're so colorful and lively and vibrant, and I enjoy them. And then you think back to the animated version, you're like, wait, there's a better version of this out there. Every sequence, every moment, every story beat, every single one of those is just better than the animated film. That, like, bar none. That's the truth. For the live action Moana, reminds me to say that it is exactly what you expected. It's a near carbon copy of the original, now with Dwayne Johnson's luscious locks, consistently making you wonder, why am I not just watching the original animated version? At the very least, Catherine is incredibly charming as Moana and brings a real spark to the role. I honestly hoped for more, but I just got exactly what I expected, and that sucks. I don't think this is, again, a bad movie. I don't think this is a terrible movie, and I will really proclaim that. But it's not a great movie, and it's just, again, if I think Moana is great, this is just fine. And I'm not going to remember this film in T-minus, like, a day. So all that said, I'm going to give the live action Moana a 2.5 out of 5. Again, there's worse movies that have come out this year, but in terms of like remembrance and like really getting the hone and spirit of what the original film is, this movie kind of just lacked that heart, and it really sucks. But I will give a shout out to Catherine. I cannot wait to see what she does next. Thank you so much again, guys, for watching this, and of course, until next time, stay classy.
Why is it always...
It's a real life hell, and it is evil.
So at the end of the obsession, we know that Nikki Freeman does get arrested because of what happened. Obviously, she...
Evil Dead Burn. My God, the most... relentless one yet, possibly. Alright, buddy, welcome back to a brand new movie review. Today we're discussing Evil Dead Burn. One of my most anticipated movies for this year, if not my most anticipated horror movie for this year, mainly because this is my favorite horror franchise, and we're living in such a great world that we just keep getting Evil Dead movies. We got Evil Dead Rise a couple years back, we got Evil Dead Burn this year, we're getting Evil Dead Wrath next year, which I'm out of my mind excited for. And now with Evil Dead Burn, the trailers were making this look to be like returning to what Fede Alvarez had delivered in his remake of the Evil Dead, and even a little bit of what Sam Raimi had done with the original Evil Dead, which was definitely less kooky and less goofy and less groovy and more horror-centric. And I will tell you right now, this movie is all of that and more. It is a genuinely bloody bloodbath of a movie. And I mean, most Evil Dead movies and most Evil Dead properties are gory, bloody, all sorts of things like that. But this movie, like, takes the cake in a lot of different ways. To compare it to any film in this franchise, it is definitely more comparable to Fede Alvarez's 2013 remake. But man, this movie's insane, especially after you're dealing with the loss of your husband, which this woman seeks solace with her in-laws. As one by one they transform into deadites, she comes to discover that the vows she took in life survive even in death. And I don't know anything that the director Sebastian has ever done personally. I'm really interested to dive back into more of his stuff and to see how he got this gig. But I can see, like, just from execution in terms of the way that he moves the camera, it is the most vibrant and lively of an Evil Dead since what Sam Raimi had done, in my opinion. I love the way that this movie was shot and the way that it was brought to life. And that was actually one of my worries watching the trailer. I thought it was going to be a little bit drag and a little bit boring and, you know, not look as great, but there are genuinely some great looking sequences. But what I loved is that each and every one of the sequences always had some nice twist or turn when it came down to the camera and the way that the camera moved. It's one thing that I think Evil Dead Rise did not accomplish. It had some definitely good moments to it, but this for me was like such an all-star thing, and I loved that part. As well as adding in there, the kills in here are just... Whew, they're tough to watch at times. I mean, I was squirming in my seat at times, gripping the seat. The couple next to me, I swear, they must have never seen an Evil Dead movie before, because bless the dude's heart, he was hiding behind his girlfriend. I was like, man, you must be down. To the point that they didn't even stay for the post-credit scenes, which I will say, definitely stay for both. The first one's really fun. The second one is awesome if you're an Evil Dead fan. That's like something I just have to say is that, like, as excited as I am about saying this, I don't think that this is the best one. In fact, it's actually probably tied for last, but that just goes as far to show how much fun this franchise can be, how awesome this franchise is, how consistent this franchise is. And I will say that Evil Dead continues to be the most consistent horror franchise alive. There is not one bad installment, at least for me, and each of them are either good to great in this. And Evil Dead Burn is another good addition to it all. That's actually where I really want to talk about the performances, because I think everyone does a good job in here, but this is actually one of the things that Evil Dead Rise, which was my least favorite Evil Dead, I'm still kind of deciding if I think Burn or Rise are less for me. They're kind of tied in my book, because there's things that Evil Dead Rise did that I really liked, and there's things that I wish it did a little bit different, and same thing with Evil Dead Burn. But both of these movies have one consistent thing, is I feel that all the performances are always solid to good, but there's always one massive standout. Now, Evil Dead Rise had Alyssa Sutherland, who was absolutely incredible as the Deadite in there, Mommy. Absolutely love that. Love the transformation to what that Deadite became. I think that's literally one of the most grotesque things that we've ever seen in this Evil Dead franchise, and that's one thing I wish Burn would have done, because like the final boss, quote unquote, I didn't think was like as scary. It was a cool design, but I feel like they could have probably done more with it, especially like as you're watching the third act. I was waiting for it to like transform into some sense, but I really loved what they did with Sutherland in Evil Dead Rise, and I think it was such a standout role just from the writing to everything like that. This movie, I don't think there's necessarily a standout Deadite. I think all of them do a good job as the Deadites and have definitely lines or memorable moments, but I always felt that the standout of this is Alice, who I'm gonna probably mispronounce this name, but it's Solie Yuckup. She's a French actress, and she's phenomenal in this. She's great. She goes above and beyond what the material actually is here, because her character is very surface level, and there are some heavy themes of like abuse in here that I actually really liked how the film touched on. She gone the extra mile in an Evil Dead movie, and that's like the one thing I was wishing for. And I think when it comes down to all these Evil Dead movies that we've gotten in the last 2 years, Evil Dead Rise, Evil Dead Burn, I'm hoping Evil Dead Wrath surpasses those, is one thing. As enjoyable as they are, I still feel that this franchise is missing a soul. Ash was the soul for literally decades, to the point that he even got his own TV show, and that TV show is completely underrated. It should have gone for more seasons, and I love Bruce Campbell. I mean, genuinely enough, I love him. Evil Dead 2013, the remake, I thought Mia was actually pretty close in line with Ash, to the point where I wanted to see another installment of her. I think she had this like attitude and like grittiness and charismatic personality thing to her that like just made me love her, but in a different way than what Ash was. And I just feel that none of the, and it goes nothing towards the performances. I do want to say that. I think it's completely how the characters are written. But the fact that Evil Dead Rise, like the standout for that was a Deadite, and like that's it. To where this one is, again, the protagonist, I just sat there wanting more. I wanted more from Evil Dead Burn, and I think I just feel in both these movies that it's lacking a little bit of a soul. The thing I will give on the contrary on here, where I think Evil Dead Rise kind of didn't use its entire concept fully, I do think Evil Dead Burn uses its concept completely right, especially from everything it jumps down to within the in-laws, to the setting that it brings you into, which is a setting that we're kind of familiar with. You know, it's basically a house in the middle of the woods, and there's no one around that could hear you scream. And I think that's cool, and I think that's fun, and I think it adds a little bit of more lore to the world of Evil Dead. But again, so one thing I will say is that I did definitely feel that Evil Dead Rise was always waiting for that shift, for that next thing, for that thing to just hone it home and bring it to life. And I felt that there were always memorable and fun sequences, but not one that makes me go, oh my god. I'll get to my final thoughts here. I definitely think Evil Dead Burn is relentless as hell. It's lean, mean, and unforgiving, and it's a vicious, gory bloodfest that'll have you squirming in your seat and praying for God himself. It's not the franchise's best, in my opinion, but damn, are we living in an Evil Dead world. Keep making these, please. Keep supporting them, because they are genuinely good Evil Dead movies and good horror movies. They're just different, and I like how each of these can be. Evil Dead Rise definitely rode that fine line of like goofy and horror, but definitely not groovy, and I feel like that's one thing that we're kind of missing. This one definitely goes back to the 2013 remake and the OG Evil Dead, which is something actually I kind of liked. So I'm kind of still on the fence of which one I liked more or less, because there's things that I loved about Evil Dead Rise and there's things that I didn't like about it, and same thing with Evil Dead Burn, but both films are still missing one thing, and that is a soul, and I really hope Evil Dead Wrath has that. So with that said, guys, I'm going to give Evil Dead Burn a 3.5 out of 5. Genuinely enjoyed this one. I love the Evil Dead franchise, and I can't wait to hear your guys' thoughts down below. Hit that like and subscribe button for more, and of course, until next time, stay classy.
I have been asked this before. If I could direct any horror movie from a horror franchise of my choosing, it's Evil Dead any day of the week.
Can I tell you something?
Yes, go right ahead.
I've had 3 crushes my whole life. Tom Welling,
Evil Dead Burn is about after the loss of her husband.
Hold on. Let's go by the
Disney. Disney is known for its brand being family, magic, and fun. But when it comes to discourse online for movies, it is always the Disney movies. Moana is a live-action adaptation of the 2016 Disney animated film Moana. When this movie was announced, I was one of those people. Why? Like, why are we getting this version? Because we literally just got Moana 2. They're already talking about Moana 3. I feel like this movie is not needed. But the thing is if you don't know, Moana, the original movie, which is almost 10 years old right now, has been like the number 1 Disney Plus movie for the last like 5 years. So Disney says, hey, let's just redo that movie in a live action version and earn some extra money, because it's just that easy. So yes, I had a negative mindset before going to the theater today. I almost didn't see the movie because I felt like there was no need to see it. But I feel like for my reviews, for my channel, it'd be weird for me not to review a big summer movie. So I saw it today with a pretty medium crowd, a lot of kids in there, of course, and I have to say this. If you have a family, if you have young kids, or if you want to see this movie, go and see it. It is harmless. It is a movie. It's a movie that has the same music from the original movie, which the music's great. It has its fun music and energy of Moana, which I love, but it's not the same because the original movie and the animation is 10 times better. But again, this version is fine. Starting with the pros is the actress who plays Moana. She has a great singing voice. Now, obviously, she is not like Owlie from the original movie. Her version is absolutely beautiful in my mind. But for this new actress, I have to admit, her singing voice is very good. I thought for all the time she is singing these classic songs, I thought she did a really good job, and I hope she has a future in film. But I have to admit, when it comes to her actual acting in the movie, it's fine. There are better moments than others in this movie. There's a few parts where you're like, you're definitely looking at a tennis ball, and I can tell right now because this movie is filled with CGI. But for the most part, with her singing voice and her being Moana, she is fine. Again, she is not outstanding or anything, but I hope she gets better for her career. Dwayne Johnson, let me just say this. Yes, the wig, awful. His performance, not great, but I will say he brings the Maui energy. Like, that's why his voice worked so well in the original movie. But when it comes to The Rock, I feel like in this movie, he is doing The Rock in a Maui wig. And so if you like The Rock, which I do for the most part, he is okay in this movie. I mean, he's not giving a great performance at all. Like, I won't even say he's honestly good. He's fine, just like the actor who plays Moana. Our main two actors are fine in the leads of their own movie. When it comes to the CGI, there is a lot of it in this movie, but I will say about 60 to 70% of it looks pretty good, especially with the water sequences. I have to admit that sometimes when a person's on a green screen, you can tell. But like watching this movie, you can at least say it's not like the worst CGI. When it comes to just like comparing it to the original movie, I will agree this movie is not as colorful, which is a shame in my opinion. That's like a huge reason why the original Moana is so good that the colors really pop in that movie. The animation is beautiful. When it comes to this movie, it does feel like you're just looking at a lot of green screen. It's not the worst thing in the world, but it's basically something you just have to get over because it's Moana. Like, you can't do complete practical in this movie. Obviously, you've seen the original movie. And then my final positive is the music. It's the same. So basically, I like the original music. It was cool to hear in a surround sound theater again. So that's really it. You could play it in your car on the way home if you wanted to. But let's just get into it for this movie. Listen, I'm gonna tell you to watch the original movie. This movie is going to live in existence of being wasted. Like, it's like, why? Like, why did we need this? And people are gonna continue to bash on this movie for that reason. But if you actually do just watch it, it is the same movie. So then everyone online is like, why would you give this one a negative review, but not the original? The clear answer is this movie does not work as well as the original because the original has beautiful animation, it has color, it had originality to it when you first see it, and it also just feels so expressive with its animation and its character designs. This movie has the word of stale. It just feels like a movie that's like, we've seen this before, literally at home on Disney Plus. And it's a sad state for Disney right now because they just want to make a quick buck, honestly. And to do that, you make the most popular brand you have right now, which is Moana. I mean, Moana 2 just made $1 billion, and that wasn't even that good. I can't even imagine how much this movie is going to make. But I will say, the box office projections have been low on this weekend. So honestly, I do hope people finally realize, why would I spend all this money to go see this in theaters when I can watch the original at home? That's all I want. But I will say, if you choose to go see this movie, it's the original movie. Again, in a live-action version. And there's certain people online who are getting a little bit ridiculous. The first thing I've seen is people say, why would you give the live-action How to Train Your Dragon a good positive review when it's the exact same movie as the animated one? That's the same thing with the Moana movies, right? You're not wrong, but I will say this. How to Train Your Dragon at least has more human characters and has the ability to at least be live action. If you watch the original Moana movie, you don't think, yeah, this should be live action, because all it is a ton of CGI. That's what this movie is, and you're not getting that strongest performances, you're not getting the strong magic from the original movie, you're just getting it in a more stale version, because it doesn't look as good as the original movie, it doesn't sound as good, it's not performed as good, it's literally just another version of the movie that's not as good. And that's why it's harmless, because it is still watchable. Like, you have the songs, you have the big CGI moments, you have the Moana action and such, but it's the same movie. And so that is why it is up to you. Do you want to watch the same movie again in theaters with live action people? If you want to do that, go see it. It's harmless. But all our points are to the people who love the original, why waste the money? Why even go see this? I'm doing it because I like reviewing movies. But if I really didn't have this channel, I would not watch this movie. Because
you see how much like the original it is?
Because it looked like a live-action adaptation that was completely copy and paste, and that is what it is. I'm going to give Moana a C-. Before you even say it or think it, no, I would not give the original movie a C-. I would give that like an A or an A+. But that's a great animated movie. This live-action movie is not. It's very much the same thing, just in live action. And you could say live action because there's a lot of CGI in this movie. So there it is. There's my review.
And you're saying very much the same thing as every other reviewer.
You have the discourse online if you want to, but for me personally, I'm going to move on in life. It's a movie, for crying out loud, and it's not the worst thing ever, but it's not needed whatsoever. And if you guys enjoyed this movie review, I'll see you guys in
What a little dick.
Nothing was going to take Sarah's whimsy away. Look at her smiling right before life hits her like a brick. And then Indy wearing a helmet, smashing her head into the window. I love all these behind the scene features.
This is my wig helmet. Because I bashed my head into a window. Seen in this. Banging too hard a little bit. She got bangs. She banging. Is it bangs for putting the bitches on? Is it my fault to get the bitches on? Oh my god.
Nothing was going to take Sarah's whimsy away. Look at her smiling right before life hits her like a brick. And then Indy wearing a helmet, smashing her head into the window. I love all these behind the scene features.
Is that in like another
Why is it always Disney? Disney is no husband, a woman seeks solace with her in-laws. In the horror community, I have been asked this before. If I could direct any horror movie from a horror franchise of my choosing, it's Evil Dead any day of the week. Evil Dead Burn is about after the loss of her husband, a woman seeks solace with her in-laws. In the horror community, we've all said that Scream was the most consistent horror franchise until Scream 7 this year. And now we all can just say Evil Dead is the most consistent horror franchise. And now we are talking about Evil Dead Burn. I'm gonna butcher the last name of this director, but his first name is Sebastian, and he directed a movie called Infested, which I did see, but I did not review. And I really enjoy that movie. And if you watch it, you're like, man, that guy should probably direct an Evil Dead movie. And now here we are in a brand new Evil Dead movie, which thank you, Sam Raimi and Bruce Campbell. They've made a promise that we don't have to wait super long for Evil Dead movies, because it seems really odd to me, but a lot of people didn't really like Evil Dead Rise. I honestly think that's my second or third favorite in the entire franchise. Now, I am one of those people where I say the original movie, The Evil Dead, is my all-time favorite in the franchise. It's one of my all-time favorite movies, and I've said it before, but the Evil Dead movie is one of those movies where when I watch it, I'm inspired. I get creative. So whenever a new movie comes out, as a big horror fan, I'm just super excited to see the next installment of the Evil Dead franchise. Like I said, I really loved Evil Dead Rise. It's gotten better over the years. And so looking at this one, I like the director they chose for this one. I know we're getting Evil Dead Wrath next year, I believe. So as an Evil Dead fan, as a horror fan, I'm excited. But I have to be honest with you guys, because you're here for my review. And my review of this movie is, it's good. But if I have to choose now my least favorite Evil Dead movie, it is this one. But I'm not saying this movie's bad. As an Evil Dead fan, I think Evil Dead fans are gonna go see this movie and enjoy it, especially if you're there for the gore and the disgusting moments that the Evil Dead is known for. You're really going to enjoy this movie, because let's begin with those positives. The Evil Dead franchise has always been a creative camera work style type of franchise. Obviously, Sam Raimi made the Evil Dead isms as in the original trilogy, and people have gone and just really taken that inspiration and used it in their own films. But everyone always goes back to Evil Dead. It's just like the style of disgusting comedy, scary, bloody, and they use it in the creative outlooks of the camera, the cinematography, and this movie is the definition of this director taking his own style and making an Evil Dead movie, which I love. I never just want to see a copycat version of Sam Raimi's style. I want to see their own directors take their style and put it in an Evil Dead movie. And I feel like for this movie, there are many moments I literally under my breath was like, holy shit, to some of this camera work. There's a shot of a mirror that you're watching. You have no idea it's inside of a mirror until this girl gets thrown into the mirror and the camera pulls in and pulls out. It was such a crazy shot that I was like, I love that. And I had no idea that was a mirror shot, and I love that. There's tons of camera work in this movie with how the camera turns, how it moves around in each room. I would love to see the behind the scene videos of how they use these sets. I know there's going to be a few parts where they have to turn the set upside down and the camera itself. It was just beautiful cinematography, and it honestly just works perfectly for the Evil Dead isms because you have our Deadites, you have crazy gore moments, but the movie is always having a moving camera and having fun, and that's what we all want. Now, I have seen a few people on Twitter already say this is the goriest Evil Dead movie, this is the most brutal one. I would not say that, actually. I would actually say the last one and the 2013 one is way more gory, in my opinion, and more painful, but that's not to say there are painful moments in this movie.
That's exactly what I've been thinking. I'm glad he said that. That's one good thing he said. Is that this is not the most goriest Evil Dead. It's just not. And people need to quit saying that. People need to quit saying that.
Movie. There are moments that make you completely like, and just, there's one moment with an ear completely got under my skin. I was like, that is nasty, and if I was that person, I'm just dead, because what happens is awful. But there's plenty of moments of this movie. There's one moment involving teeth. Disgusting. And there's a kiss in this movie, absolutely horrifying. It's the worst kiss you could ever watch on a screen. But as an Evil Dead fan, you've come to know this franchise, and this franchise continues to just be gory, be over the top, be creative in its camera work, and I feel like this director did a very good job of taking his style and making an Evil Dead movie. Like, you can watch each of these movies besides the original trilogy of Sam Raimi, and you can see Fede Alvarez and the last director's style. Like, you can see each movie's style difference, which I love, because I don't want them ever to feel stale. And for this movie to be the sixth one installment, I have to say, overall, I really enjoy just the style, the gore, the Deadites. Whenever we get into our Deadites of the story, the movie really does pick up, but I can say confidently, I'm not calling this a bad movie, but I walk away a little disappointed. Starting with the mixed aspects is the music. I will say the score is really good. Like, I love the score to this movie. But then when they interject a lot of just like rap music or music that's inside of the movie itself, it didn't really work for me. Now, again, I might just be an old head to Evil Dead. Obviously, this movie's trying to be in 2026. It's an Evil Dead movie that today's society can look at and kind of relate to. And so the music itself is part of the movie, but I can't lie that it felt off looking at it in this movie. But again, that's probably just on the first viewing. But the score that's actually in this movie, whenever there's parts of just pure score, really good stuff. I will also say the pacing is not the best. Once you're in the house and the Deadites start to come to life, the movie becomes Evil Dead. It becomes the gory, amazing camera work, really nice, just scary moments. I love what they do with the Deadites' eyes. It's really cool stuff when you're in the house. But besides the house stuff, I will say it's a very slow-paced movie, which is shocking. Even though it's like an hour and 50-minute movie, I do feel like probably like 15 minutes of it could have been cut off, because like at the end of this movie, there's a part where we have a really cool fire involvement, without getting into spoilers, and there's a really cool shot with Red in the forest. I'm like, this is badass. But the movie decides to make the third act, the final scene in this movie, in a totally different area, and that totally felt like it was dragging out the ending itself, and I feel like they could have honestly just cut that and had the whole situation happen in front of this fire. But now let's get into the negatives, and like I said, I do walk away from this movie slightly disappointed, because I always feel like the Evil Dead franchise feels so new when you get a new director in there. And with this movie, obviously you have to walk in there and expect you're not going to get the exact same movie of people in a cabin, whatever, which is why I think Evil Dead Rise really worked. But in this movie, it's basically a house in the woods. So I will say, for its setting alone, it felt like we were kind of backtracking a little bit. But the idea of the movie being a family going through a loss, I love the idea of it, but there are so many moments where that is really going for a gut punch dramatic moment. None of it worked for me. I feel like the entire movie's actual characters and plot was really terribly developed in the script because I never cared for anybody. In Evil Dead Rise, I cared enough about the family, and when people started dying in the family, I cared, and it was more brutal because you care about the characters and you're seeing horrific moments happen to them. And in this movie, when those horrific moments are happening, I don't really care what's going on. I like the main actress. I thought she was fine in the movie, but all...
Bro, I feel like I want to slap you every time you say movie. Quit saying movie so many damn times.
All of our family elements, like the grandma, the dad, the mom, and everything, I never cared for their characters, and they're very one note when you actually get to meet them because you're dealing with this loss of a son. And I just feel like the movie had an awesome idea. They just did a bad job developing these characters and for the audience to care about them. I didn't care about anyone, so when the shit hits the fan, it would have been way more effective. And like I said, there are many moments in this movie where they go for a dramatic punch, and to me, it fell really flat. Which, speaking of flat, I have to say this because if I don't, I feel like I'm like not telling the truth. There is some bad acting in this movie. There is some terrible acting, especially in the first 20 minutes. The first 20 minutes, I was worried. I was like, oh my god, is this how bad it's gonna be? Once you have our cold open, which really had some choppy editing, you get to this club scene. One of the worst scenes I've seen in a movie entire year, honestly, because the acting in this scene, awful. The editing is downright terrible, involving ADR from this one male character. It's awful. It is truly awful. You see a shot of him not moving his mouth and you hear him talking. It's like, that is some poor stuff right there. Because it felt like the studio was like, hey, we need to get to the Deadites. We need to get to the Evil Dead isms. We need to get to that really quick. So the beginning of this movie doesn't develop these characters or this family storyline really well enough to where when shit's the fan, you don't really care. And also, I should have mentioned this more in my mix, but it is more of a negative. How they involve the history of Evil Dead is really cool, but them involving the new book they have in this movie felt really thrown in. It felt like an idea of like, hey, we want to do stuff with our Deadites, which I'm down with. What they want to do is cool ideas. How they do it never feels consistent. Like, there's one scene where you see a character turn into a Deadite, and then for the next 10 minutes, they're straight human, and then they turn back into a Deadite. But during those 10 minutes, this character is helping the main character. So the whole time, you're like, we've seen you become a Deadite. So they should have not shown this person become a Deadite, and the whole time, you could be wondering, are they a Deadite? And then when they actually show it, it's like, oh, well, the audience knew that. But again, I feel like the story is just so inconsistent of actually having character moments and those really deep, slow moments, because those are the moments that really affect characters, the development. When the shit hits the fan, it's entertaining. It's awesome. It's bloody. You're having a good time. But I cannot lie to you and say, for the first 30 minutes of this movie, I was sitting there saying, this is rough. Like, I'm talking bad, especially that club scene. The club scene is, ugh. And the cold open, it's cool and all, but the editing is really choppy. So overall, I will say Evil Dead Burn is a good time. As a big Evil Dead fan, I enjoyed watching this movie. I'm not going to call this like a Scream 7 where this is bad. I'm going to go positive my grade, but I have to at least admit, this is probably my least favorite. Actually, for sure, this is my least favorite Evil Dead movie, because when you look at this franchise and how consistent they've been, this one felt very much like, hey, we have really cool, neat ideas, but we don't really give good development on that. Here's all the gore, though, that you want to see, and that's enjoyable. The camera work is great. The directing is very strong. There is some really good Evil Dead isms in this movie, but I do have to admit, I walk away a little disappointed, but I'm still saying it's a good movie. I'm going to give Evil Dead Burn a B-. Also, I just want to mention, there are 2 post-credit scenes, one in the middle and one at the very end. The one in the middle is a nice little joke. The one at the very end after the credits, that one is interesting and exciting because the Evil Dead franchise has always been a little connective. That scene very much was like, hey, here's that. So, without any spoilers, let me know down below what you think about this movie, what you think about the Evil Dead franchise, which one is your favorite. We all know you're going to say Evil Dead 2, so what is your second favorite? Mine is the original, The Evil Dead 1981. And if you guys enjoyed this movie review, I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye, everybody.
Evil Dead Burn, the newest Evil Dead movie just dropped, just got back from the theaters, and let me tell you something. The diabolical deceased in this one, they're making like my ass after eating too much grease. They are burning. The title doesn't lie. And I won't lie either, I didn't like it as much as Evil Dead Rise. But I did still like it. I think it's a good movie. It's just wasn't as good as Evil Dead Rise, which I thought delivered pretty much everything you'd want in an Evil Dead movie. It really nailed everything that it was going for there. I am quite a big fan of that one. And I do like this one. It's just if you're going to compare it to the last one, I do think it's a slight step backwards. Nothing drastic. It's just, I think now it's getting to the point where you kind of know exactly what to expect from an Evil Dead film. This one is very content just giving you the same dish again, which is kind of a complaint I had about The Mummy, Lee Cronin's The Mummy, where it just kind of felt like I got fed a reheated Evil Dead Rise. This feels like I got served something off the Evil Dead Rise menu that was a little bit cheaper. Like, they're all still fine. Like, this movie, I like it a lot more than Lee Cronin's The Mummy, but it's still pretty much one-to-one what you're expecting having seen an Evil Dead movie. I would have liked to just see it try to do something a little more, shake it up a bit. But it's still good. Like, it's still fun. Like, watching the Deadites, get all gross and gory while giggling and joking around. Though in this movie, I will say they're not as, like, deviously taking pleasure in, like, the tormenting of their targets or anything like that. They're much more, like, strictly business. They didn't have as many, like, joke lines or anything. Not to say that this film's light on the comedy. Comedy is, like, kind of a big part of Evil Dead's identity, and it is here. There are some, like, actually pretty solid sequences that got a bit of a giggle, especially when it came to, like, the grandmother. So, like, they did do a good job still with the comedy. It's just most of it didn't come through the Deadites this time around. They felt a lot more serious. Though they also felt a lot less intimidating in this one, which is surprising because they did, like I said, take it more seriously. Like, they were there on a mission. In a nutshell, they are now after this family because they have a special item that directly counters them. They've got the Excalibur to vanquish the Deadites, and it was accidentally discovered by the son of the grandfather, whom you'll recognize his voice because he is the voice on the tapes in Evil Dead Rise. So his grandson was in his attic in his house and happened to find that item, which awoke the Deadites because they now felt its presence and needed to go get rid of it so that way they couldn't just be stopped by it. And in doing so, they were there on a mission, so they weren't, being as, like, jokey or anything, but they also just weren't being very effective at killing either. They still, of course, did take detours to try and, like, unnerve and freak out the family and shit, like drinking candle wax or, like, shooting themselves in the head to blow pieces of their brain out while kind of, like, aura farming while doing it. But if you're expecting Evil Dead Rise where there's, like, wacky one-liners and stuff coming from them, it's not here. Not really. Which I don't think is, like, the biggest deal in the world, but it's something I wanted to make a mention of. Anyway, the film gives you some characters that you probably won't care about except for its main character, Alice. So, Alice is in an abusive relationship with her husband, Will. And Will's family is the one that has the history of dabbling in this Deadite business here. Like, we're just gonna get into spoilers. I don't even know why I'm gonna, like, vaguely talk about it. So, like, the grandfather is the one on the tapes. He had been researching everything about the Deadites, had found the dagger that can vanquish them, and he had all these artifacts, all this research, and Will's brother Joseph had been researching it because he's a writer and was gonna write a book about it. Joseph has a girlfriend, Thea, and Will, Joseph,
DJ.
Thea, and
Alice
Alice
to work with you.
are
We're gonna
pretty
have so
tight.
much fun.
And then one night at a club, Will and Thea and Alice are getting into it in front of Thea and Joseph, and it ends in, like, a huge blow up. Will is very clearly just like a loose cannon, and he's showing in front of them that he is pretty abusive, but no one really steps in to do anything about it. So then he storms off drunk driving, and that's when he encounters Deadite Jessica from Evil Dead Rise, the beginning of Evil Dead Rise, who had just killed two fishermen after being alerted to the dagger being found. So now she is trying to find it. She kills 2 fishermen and then gets hit by Will off drunk driving, and that's when he encounters Deadite Jessica from abusive, but no one really steps in to do anything about it. He's showing in front of them that he is pretty abusive, but no one really steps to it in front of Thea and Joseph, and it ends in like are pretty tight, and then one goes a book about it. Joseph has a girlfriend, Thea, vanquished them, and he had all of these artifacts, all this research, and Will's brother Joseph had been researching it because he's a writer and was going to write a book about it. Joseph has a girlfriend, Thea, and Will, Joseph, Thea, and Alice are pretty tight.
It's actually Tina. Tina.
And then Joseph, Thea, and girlfriend Thea. And Will, Joseph, Thea, and Alice are pretty tight. And then one night at a club, Will and Thea and Alice are getting into it in front of Thea and Joseph, and it ends in like a huge blow up. Will is very clearly just like a loose cannon, and he's showing in front of them that he is pretty abusive, but no one really steps in to do anything about it. So then he storms off drunk driving, and that's when he encounters Deadite Jessica from Evil Dead Rise, the beginning of Evil Dead Rise, who had just killed 2 fishermen after being alerted to the dagger being found. So now she is trying to find it. She kills 2 fishermen and then gets hit by Will on the road and then burns him alive and possesses him. And through that, ends up possessing Will's father, Will and Joseph's father, Edgar, and that's when things pop off, and then Edgar starts like attacking. He murders the family dog at the dinner table, and then murders Joseph's girlfriend, and now they have 2 Deadites here, and they have to fight against them. And the whole time, like I said, the Deadites aren't really being like super jokey or anything, but the whole time that they're attacking, they're kind of just like throwing wet noodle punches and then like sometimes slamming. Like when they're slamming against the wall, like slamming the mother against the wall, it's very clearly very strong, like superhuman strength. But a lot of the time they're not even doing that. They're just like, I don't know, shaking them like it's a protein shake and not really doing a whole lot of anything. So like they didn't feel as intimidating as they did in Evil Dead Rise, where at any moment they could just kill and did just kill at any moment. That didn't really happen here. Which I guess you could chalk up to them needing Joseph in particular to be alive to tell them where the dagger is. But couldn't they also have just done the possession on him and found it anyway, since they knew that it was most likely in the house? I don't know, it felt a little convenient that they just wouldn't, or rather couldn't do that for whatever reason. They do eventually, big spoilers, but they do eventually possess Joseph. So like, sure, like it was an option. They could do it. They just didn't. And I'm surprised they didn't, because like I said, they could have just searched it or through the possession found it, but whatever. It's not that big of a deal. All I'm saying is like they weren't as like intimidating and scary as they were in Evil Dead Rise, as we have previously seen the Deadites. But that's not to say that they weren't like brutal and there wasn't like a lot of gruesome, over-the-top kills and stuff, because there definitely were. Like, there were all types of gore and viscera, fucking all kinds of body parts flying all over the place and squelching and squealing and all of that. Like, that's very much intact. That's not what I'm trying to say, that it was, like, very, underwhelming or whatever in that department, because it wasn't. There definitely were some unnerving, uncomfortable scenes. It's just, overall, I'd say the Deadites were kind of like a nerfed version of how we have seen them in the past. Now, as for the other characters, they're all pretty flat for the most part, but I would say the mother's one of the more interesting ones because she has a pretty big role in this film. She is all about family because her father, Joseph and Will's grandfather, basically abandoned the family, leaving it up to her to take care of everything because he was so obsessed and consumed with his research into this that he basically just left the family to fend for themselves while the grandmother kind of slowly succumbed to mental illness and, then the mom had to again step up and take care of everything and everyone. So now she values family so much. And with Will's death, she is torn apart, but doing her best to keep it together for Joseph and the rest of them. And then eventually she slowly falls apart. And then it's revealed that in this desperation to make family the most important thing in her life, she overlooked the heinous shit Will was doing to Alice. The mom knew about it, but just couldn't wrestle with the reality that her son was a bad guy because she just needed family to be like that rock, that infallible thing in her life. And Alice calls her out on that. I thought it was a really good sequence there because Alice is a character who's been through so much with Will abusing her, physically abusing her. And then after Will's death, she doesn't wear the ring. She didn't really want to say anything at his funeral, and she keeps it all bottled up because she doesn't want to talk about the real Will to the family whom she is still trying to be close with, but she wants to go back to France. And I think Alice was a pretty strong character for the most part. She's the one that gets the most to do, being the main character, obviously. So she has like the badass moments. She's got like a fucking weed whacker that she chops them up with. She's got the dagger that she uses to fight them directly. She starts piling up Deadite corpses. So she was cool, I thought. Joseph, I also thought was a pretty interesting character. They made him just like a bitch. Like, that's his whole thing. It's established early on that he starts these books but just can't finish it. Like, he's afraid to really commit to finishing it. And in, like, the attack on his girlfriend at the hands of his father, he has the gun to his father's head. The girlfriend, as she's being strangled by him, is begging him to shoot, but he just doesn't. He's too afraid and then eventually flees as his father kills Thea. And you expect him to go through like a character arc of no longer being afraid and like getting the dagger to fight back. And he kind of like teeters on that for a moment, but never like actually commits. So like he stays kind of the same character for the most part, which kind of makes him a little underwhelming, but that's kind of the idea behind him. He's not the main character. So like that didn't bother me all that much. There really is kind of just Alice as the character that gets fleshing out. The others stay relatively the same, except for the mother, who I found to be pretty interesting. But I don't have like any real complaints there. It's just they're not super memorable characters overall. Now, what I do have a big complaint about is the ending. I think the film had a really good natural point to stop at the end, but then decides to go a step further and use a CGI bad guy that goes on for way too long and looks way too shitty. So they, like I said, Will was burned alive by the Deadite and then possessed. And after everything that happens in the house with Alice and the other Deadites, well, then Will shows up in the burning house and his flesh is melting off of him. He's basically like a walking corpse with a lot of ash, and it's just, he's just this charred remains of Will, and it looks terrible. So they have him chase her around for the final confrontation that happens at like a construction site, and the CGI on him just really doesn't look good. It looks really rough. And I don't think it added anything to the movie for that. Like, I get why they did that, so that way she could be the one to finally, like, break free, which makes sense, but, like, the whole sequence to do it, I just thought was kind of weak. Plus, you still could have got the same effect where it ended, because she does break free from a family that was enabling Will's abusive behavior. So, like, I don't think she directly needed to drive the dagger into Will through this chase sequence where they just have him randomly show up at the end as, like, the burnt corpse chasing her around. It just made the movie kind of drag on longer while showing really, really bad CGI there. But it's not, like, the biggest deal in the world. Like, it's still, I think, a good movie. So if you like the Evil Dead films, I think you'll probably walk away satisfied. Maybe not as much as you were with Evil Dead Rise, but by no means is it like a letdown, I would say. So anyway, that's really about it. So yeah.
For as straightforward a conceit as the Evil Dead franchise has traded on for over 40 years, read from the cursed book, Awaken the Vengeful Deadites, it's always been something of a magic trick to watch how far each movie can push that conceit while still remaining true to the creative spirit of Sam Raimi's 1981 original. Raimi's sequels set some very loose boundaries in that regard, but Fede Alvarez and Lee Cronin's later takes each found varying degrees of success adapting the story into a more modern cinematic context. By comparison, Evil Dead Burn, helmed by French director Sebastian Vanacek, doesn't meaningfully add to the conversation. I'm Tom Jorgensen, and this is my review of Evil Dead Burn.
To your perfect family. Cheers.
An extended prologue sets Evil Dead Burn squarely in the aftermath of the events of Evil Dead Rise, as a couple of unlucky fishermen find out what happens to those who indulge in outdoor recreation while deadites are on the prowl. From there, Burn catches up with a completely new set of characters, led by Alice, a French expat grappling with not just the recent death of her abusive husband Will Price, but a set of in-laws who are struggling to find a way forward through all of that grief. Once the Prices hunker down at the family farm, their connection to the fated Necronomicon comes into focus, and if you can believe
ये मूवी साल 2004 में रिलीज हुई थी। इसकी रेटिंग की बात करें तो 7 है। नंबर 3 पैरानॉर्मल एक्टिविटी, ये मूवी साल 2007 में रिलीज हुई थी। टॉप 10 हॉरर मूवी इन वर्ल्ड, चलिए देख द लास्ट स्कॉट सैम, ये मूवी 2010 में रिलीज हुई थी। इसकी रेटिंग की बात करें तो 5.7 है। नंबर 9 इविल डेड, ये मूवी साल 1981 में रिलीज हुई थी। इसकी रेटिंग की बात करें तो 7.4। नंबर 8 द स्ट्रेंजर, ये मूवी साल 2008 में रिलीज हुई थी। इसकी रेटिंग की बात करें तो 6.1 की रेटिंग है। नंबर 7 द स्कॉट सैम ऑफ एमिली रोज, ये मूवी 2005 में रिलीज हुई थी। इसकी रेटिंग की बात करें तो 6.7 की रेटिंग है। नंबर 6 द हिचर, ये मूवी साल 2007 में रिलीज हुई तो 5. मूवी साल 2009 में रिलीज हुई थी। इसकी रेटिंग की बात करें तो 5.9। नंबर 4 साल 2004 में रिलीज हुई थी। इसकी रेटिंग की बात करें तो 7 है। नंबर एक्टिविटी, ये मूवी साल 2007 में रिलीज हुई थी। इसकी रेटिंग 2 REC, ये मूवी साल 2007 में रिलीज हुई थी। इसकी रेटिंग की बात करें तो 7.1। द एक्सॉर्सिस्ट, ये मूवी साल 1973 में रिलीज हुई थी।
Believe it, they come under assault by deadites who are out to recover an artifact in the family's possession. Once the action moves to the farm, Evil Dead Burn
Just met, man. My eyes are up here, man.
That's pretty serious about your security, huh?
I think you still have my wallet.
Não festa do fim de semana.
Closely adheres to the familiar Dead by Dawn structure favored by its forerunners. Organizing the Deadite action that's to follow around Alice's inner turmoil is a good instinct, but it's one that Fede Alvarez's Evil Dead reboot, the movie that Byrne most closely aligns with tonally, found much more success in mining. Externalizing how Mia's drug addiction was destroying herself and her loved ones in the form of the Deadites, a level of thematic specificity that Raimi never really had much interest in mining with the creatures, led to a strong connection between the horrific violence in that movie and its main character's arc, each benefiting in turn. Evil Dead Rises' Beth learns that she's pregnant in the opening scene and immediately has the associated anxiety attacking her in the most closely analogous way possible for her, through her single mom sister and her kids. Here, Alice is contending with similarly weighty issues in the aftermath of a terrible marriage, but Evil Dead Byrne's attempts to structure itself around how that complicates Alice's grief tend to ring hollow. Vanacek and co-writer Florent Bernard's script routinely shortchanges and obscures the character's personality, giving Suilia Rakub very little room to build Alice into more than just a cipher for those in abusive situations. And I know what you're probably thinking, it's an Evil Dead movie, like why are they going to so much trouble to have the main character have a story? It's kind of the entire key to horror these days, is making sure that you're bought into the main character's plight and emotionally there with them throughout. And it's not that, you know, obviously the Evil Dead movies, the original trilogy, they kind of skip past that, but they seem to make a very pointed choice to do that. Whereas the more recent Evil Dead movies have much more thematically heavy things on their minds. And I really think that the first two modern Evil Deads do a much better job of coalescing that into a good story for the main heavy things on their minds. Evil Dead movies have much more thematically heavy things on their minds, and I really think that the first two modern Evil Deads do a much better job of coalescing that into a good story for the main character. Evil Dead Byrne, a little rougher on that score.
Don't worry. You're safe here.
Overwrought stylistic choices further hamper the cohesion between Evil Dead Byrne's action and thematic efforts. Not only do cutaways to a fight that Alice and Will had really stretch to explain why burning and fire become such common motifs in the story as it goes along, but brief though they are, these jumps out of the confines of the action at the Price farm hurt the momentum of the Deadites' onslaught. It may sound like a minor thing, but it is emblematic of other ways that Vanacek bumps against other just as important pillars of the franchise. The Price family falls neatly into horror archetypes. Will's brother Joseph is a struggling author and serves as Byrne's primary vehicle for delivering Necronomicon-sourced information. There's also uptight mom Susan, emotionally repressed and explosively angry dad Edgar, and cognitively declining yet at times spookily lucid Grandma Polly. Archetypes can be a very useful tool for keeping a story moving, but in an Evil Dead movie, the Deadites are usually more unsettling when they're playing against their victim's personality. So Evil Dead Byrne's supernaturally fueled heightening of the Price's character flaws feels a little rote as a result.
Remember, he's down below.
But amid all the disgusting Deadite mayhem, and there is a lot of it, an Evil Dead film usually leaves room for a couple laughs. The franchise has always had a particularly complicated relationship to comedy, since Evil Dead 2 eschewed the original's intensity with its more mischievous pitch and redefined horror comedies forever in 1987. Evil Dead Byrne does make occasional overtures towards dark humor, particularly through Grandma Polly, who functions here a little like Henrietta in Evil Dead 2.
Can you look under the bed? Daddy always checks to make sure there aren't any monsters.
But Vanacek doesn't have a great handle on when or how to break the tension by leaning into laughs, especially given the dark subject matter that Alice is contending with. Like, for instance, there's one moment where a Deadite is trying to convince Polly that there's a thief in the house with what amounts to a very conversational sounding, oh yeah, there's definitely a thief in the house. It pushes the Deadites a little too far into broad comedy. Vanacek shows an unmistakable preference for shocking grotesquerie throughout Evil Dead Byrne, and on that count, he does not disappoint. Vanacek is particularly good at staging moments of Deadite action in close quarters, especially during one early sequence set in a car attempting to leave the property, which, if you've ever seen an Evil Dead movie, never goes great. Once all hell breaks loose, every moment is a fight for survival that turns a different part of the car into a weapon. Vanacek can scarcely contain his excitement to get from one gory gag to the next, littering early scenes at the Price farm with loudly telegraphed setups, establishing all the pokey stabby stuff bound to be used to pokey stabby ends later on. Once it comes time for those dominoes to fall, Vanacek seldom resists pushing the metaphorical and often literal knife in one or two extra times, even in moments where some could argue he takes it too far. Burns' chaotic carnage does get a little exhausting in the home stretch, especially by the end of a climax that feels too close to that of Alvarez's Evil Dead reboot to create any room for an original feeling final confrontation. The special effects serving those efforts come out of this somewhat scattershot experience completely blameless. Something that seemed like a safe bet from the moment a character's flesh melts off their bones like well-braised short rib after being stepped on in the opening minutes. If there's a part of the human anatomy that you are sensitive to seeing injured on screen, guess what? Evil Dead Burns got one hell of an effed up bingo card for you to fill out. So I'm giving Evil Dead Burn a 5. It is by far the most violent and oppressive Evil Dead movie yet. But even with Alice's struggles to move past her late husband as a sensible narrative hook, it has very little in the way to say with all of that sound and fury. Director Sebastian Vanacek scores the occasional visceral win as he sets the Deadites loose on a family already at its breaking point, but the series' signature sense of humor and the Kandarian history that serves as Evil Dead's backbone are woefully underdeployed, leaving Burns stuck between different modes of horror storytelling that have all been done better by this franchise in the past. Thank you so much for watching. For more movie reviews, check out what we thought of Supergirl and Toy Story 5. And as always, don't read out of the Necronomicon! It will always lead to Deadites messing with your day, and follow the IGN or whatever.
That concludes our presentation. Thank you so much for joining me. We may continue this later.